Be my wife tonight." The words came from a man Emily had never met. Low, calm, and completely serious, spoken directly into her ear, while her ex-fiancé's laughter still hung in the air across the ballroom. Emily's hand tightened around her glass. She had spent the last hour invisible, forgotten, mocked by the people who were supposed to love her most. And now a stranger in a black suit was leaning close, watching her with eyes that missed nothing, offering her something she hadn't dared want in years. Not rescue, a choice. If this story already has your heart, subscribe to our channel, follow every part until the very end, and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Nipatang. The wedding invitation had said 6 o'clock. Emily Carter arrived at 5:58 because she was a nurse, and nurses did not run late, not even to events they had spent 3 weeks dreading. She stood at the entrance of the Grand Meridian Ballroom, holding a small white envelope that contained a card she had written and rewritten 4 times. The final version said, "Congratulations, Rachel. You deserve every happiness. Simple, clean, nothing in it that would give anyone anything to talk about later." Because they would talk. They always did. She handed her coat to the attendant, smoothed the front of her dress, a pale blue wrap dress she had bought 2 years ago, and altered herself last Tuesday when she realized the side seam was separating, and walked into the room. The first person she recognized was her Aunt Patricia. Patricia saw her at the exact same moment. The smile that crossed Patricia's face was not warm. It was the particular smile of a woman cataloging information, noting the dress, noting the absence of a companion, noting everything she would repeat later at the table she would share with Emily's mother and 2 cousins, who had all arrived with husbands or boyfriends, or at minimum someone to stand beside. Emily smiled back. She kept walking. She found her table. Table 12. She had not expected to be at table 12. Table 12 was near the back wall, positioned beside the corridor that connected the kitchen to the main floor, which meant every few minutes a server would push through the double doors, and the faint industrial clang of stacked plates would interrupt whatever conversation was happening. It meant she had been seated where the sound carried and the view didn't. She sat down and set her envelope on the table and looked out at the room filling up around her. Rachel Monroe, now about to become Rachel Hendricks, had been Emily's closest friend from the ages of 7 through 22. They had grown up 3 houses apart on Elmwood Street, had shared everything from homework to heartbreak, had promised each other they would be at every important moment of each other's lives. They still were friends, in theory. In practice, the last 4 years had turned the friendship into something maintained mostly through birthday texts and occasional likes on social media. Life had pulled them in different directions. Rachel's direction had involved a law career, a man named Thomas Hendricks, who came from old Chicago money, and a social world that existed several floors above the one Emily occupied. Emily did not resent Rachel. She genuinely did not. But sitting alone at table 12 while the room around her arranged itself into perfect pairs, Emily felt the specific weight of a life that had not gone the way she planned. She was 29 years old. She was raising a 6-year-old daughter named Sophie alone. She worked double shifts at Northwestern Memorial Hospital 3 times a month so she could cover Sophie's preschool tuition and still keep the lights on in their 2-bedroom apartment. She was not unhappy exactly, but she was tired. And tonight, surrounded by flower arrangements that probably cost more than her monthly rent, watching couples move toward each other with the easy certainty of people who had never had to sit alone at table 12, she allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of feeling it. Then she picked up the water glass and took a sip and told herself to behave. Emily. The voice came from her left. She turned and found her cousin Melissa, settling into the chair 2 seats down, adjusting her diamond earrings, her husband Greg sliding in beside her. Behind them came Emily's Aunt Patricia and her husband Ron. Emily had been placed at table 12 with her family. She understood now. This wasn't an oversight. This was arrangement. "You look tired," Melissa said. which in their family had always been the acceptable way of saying you look like you're struggling. "Long week at work," Emily said. "Still doing the overnight shifts. When I need to." "You should find something with better hours," Patricia said, smoothing her napkin across her lap. "A woman your age with a child working nights. It's not sustainable." "I manage." "Sophie must miss you." "Sophie's with my neighbor. She's fine." "Of course." Patricia's tone suggested she had more to say and was choosing for the moment not to say it. She looked out toward the entrance. "I heard Daniel is coming tonight." Emily kept her expression completely still. "I know," she said. "With his wife," Melissa added. Not unkindly necessarily, but she added it. "I know that too," Emily said. She picked up her water glass again. She took another sip. She fixed her eyes on the floral centerpiece and decided that the next hour of her life was going to require a different kind of strength than the kind she used at work. But she had been practicing this particular kind for 4 years now, and she was reasonably good at it. Daniel Brooks appeared at the reception 40 minutes later. Emily was watching the cocktail hour wind down, half listening to Patricia explain that Melissa and Greg were considering a move to a bigger house in Naperville when she heard his laugh. She would have known that laugh in a hurricane. 6 years ago, Daniel Brooks had been the person she thought she would build her life around. They had been together for 3 years, engaged for 7 months. She had been 2 months pregnant when she told him, and she had held his hand when she said it, and she had believed completely that they were going to handle it together. He had been quiet for a long time. Then, he had said that he wasn't sure he was ready, that this wasn't the right time, that he cared about her, he did, but this wasn't what he'd planned. She had let him leave. She had not called him. She had not asked for anything. She had moved her savings into a new account, told her landlord she'd be staying, called her OB, and started figuring out what her life looked like now. That was 4 years ago. Sophie was 6 now. She had her father's dark hair and Emily's stubbornness, and absolutely nobody's permission to be anything other than exactly who she was. Daniel had not been part of that, and now he was crossing the ballroom with a tall blonde woman in a red dress who wore her confidence the way expensive clothes allowed people to wear things like the world had been arranged to accommodate her. And he was laughing at something she said, and he looked exactly like a man who had made a clean escape and never looked back. Emily turned back to the centerpiece. She was fine. She was completely fine. Emily Carter. The voice arrived before she had time to prepare. She looked up. Daniel was standing at the edge of her table. The blonde woman, his wife Lauren Emily, had learned this from Rachel's guest list, which she'd seen on the wedding website, stood slightly behind him, her expression polite and assessing. "Daniel?" Emily said. She kept her voice level. "Nurses learned that. You kept your voice level at 2 in the morning when a family was falling apart in your waiting room, and you did not have good news. You kept it level now." "You look good," Daniel said. He said it the way people said things they didn't particularly mean, but believed were appropriate to say. "Thank you." Here alone. And there it was. Not how are you, not how is Sophie. Are you here alone? Melissa had gone quiet beside her. Patricia was watching with the focused attention of someone who intended to remember this conversation precisely. "I'm here for Rachel," Emily said. Daniel nodded slowly. He let his eyes move around the table. Table 12 near the kitchen, family members only, nobody beside her. He took all of that in, and she watched him take it in, and she kept her face completely neutral and her hands completely still in her lap. "It's a beautiful venue," he said. "It is. Lauren and I were just saying we need to think about doing a venue like this for our anniversary party next spring." "That sounds nice. You should come, if you're not working nights." He smiled. Sophie would be welcome too. It was the mention of Sophie's name in his mouth, easy casual, as if he had any right to it, that hit her somewhere she hadn't fully armored. She breathed through it. "We'll see," she said. He nodded again, said something about finding their table, touched Lauren's arm, and moved away. Emily picked up her water glass. Her hand was completely steady. She was proud of that. "Don't let him do that to you," Melissa said quietly. "He didn't do anything." Emily. "He didn't." She set the glass down. "He asked if I was here alone. I am here alone. That's not his fault." Melissa opened her mouth. "I'm fine," Emily said. "I want to watch Rachel walk down the aisle, and I want to eat whatever they're serving at this dinner, and then I want to go home and pick up my daughter, and I want tonight to be exactly what it is. A friend's wedding, nothing else." Melissa closed her mouth. Patricia was looking at Emily with an expression that was for the first time that evening not calculating. It was something closer to sympathy. Emily didn't want that either. She turned toward the aisle. The music had started. Rachel was breathtaking. Emily watched her walk toward Thomas Hendricks, and she felt genuinely a swelling of something warm and real. Rachel looked like a woman who had arrived exactly where she had always been headed. Her veil caught the light. Thomas's face when he saw her was the face of a man who had been waiting without knowing how much he was waiting. Emily pressed her fingertips together in her lap. She was happy for Rachel. She was also aware watching Rachel's father take her arm and walk her down that aisle of a specific kind of loneliness that had nothing to do with being unwanted, and everything to do with having arranged your life around someone else's need for so long that you had genuinely lost the map to your own desires. Sophie needed a mother who was present, who was stable, who kept the heat on and the refrigerator stocked and showed up to the parent-teacher conferences and remembered that Tuesdays were library days, and always had the nightlight on because Sophie was 6 and the dark still frightened her. Emily did all of those things, but somewhere between the nightlights and the double shifts and the careful smiles at family events where everyone was paired off and comfortable, Emily Carter had stopped knowing what she wanted for herself. She watched Rachel say "I do." She clapped with everyone else. And then she sat down and looked at the empty chair beside her, and thought with a clarity that surprised her. "I am so tired of sitting in rooms alone." The reception began. The room rearranged itself. Tables filled with dinner plates and wine glasses, and the particular lively noise of people who were genuinely glad to be somewhere together. A band started in the far corner. The dance floor opened. Emily ate. She talked to Melissa about Naperville, and to Patricia about nothing particularly significant, and she watched the room move around her, and she was doing just fine. She was genuinely doing fine when Daniel appeared again, this time without Lauren. He pulled the empty chair beside her and sat down without asking. "Can I sit?" "You already are?" He smiled. He had always had a good smile. She had spent 3 years loving that smile and 4 years recovering from what it had cost her. "I owe you an apology," he said. Emily looked at him. "I've been thinking about it," he continued. "Lauren and I had a conversation recently about choices, things I did in the past. She encouraged me to reach out to you, and I kept putting it off, but seeing you tonight, Daniel, I want to say I'm sorry for how I handled things. You deserved better." She studied him. He meant it. She could see that he meant it, or believed he meant it, which was possibly the same thing. "Thank you," she said. "You were always stronger than me," he said. "You figured things out. You raised Sophie alone. I think about that sometimes." "Do you?" "She must be what, 5 now? 6. 6. That's incredible." He shook his head. "I missed that." He said it like it was something that had happened to him. A weather event. A flight he'd been pulled off of. Emily set her fork down. "You didn't miss it, Daniel," she said, keeping her voice very quiet, very even. "You chose not to be there. Those are different things." Something shifted in his expression. "I know that," he said. "That's what I'm apologizing for. I understand." She picked her fork back up. "I accept your apology. I do. But I'm not going to tell you it doesn't matter, because it does matter. It mattered to her, and it will keep mattering until she's old enough to decide for herself what she thinks about it. That's just the truth." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, and she could hear that he was wounded in the way men got wounded when honesty didn't land the way comfort would have. "You always had to have the last word." Emily looked at him. "I always had to have a lot of things," she said. "I managed." He stood up. He walked back toward Lauren's table. Emily looked down at her plate. Her food had gone cold. Across the ballroom, a man she had not noticed before was watching. She didn't know that yet. She was too busy managing. The cake was cut. The band shifted into something slower. The dance floor filled with couples, and Emily watched from her seat and talked to no one in particular, and checked her phone twice to make sure her neighbor hadn't texted about Sophie. Nothing. Sophie was fine. Sophie was probably already asleep. Emily was calculating quietly how soon she could leave without it reading as defeat when Patricia appeared beside her chair. "You handled that well," Patricia said. "With Daniel. Thank you, Aunt Patricia." "I heard what he said." She paused. "About you raising Sophie alone. Like it was a compliment." Emily said nothing. "You're a good mother," Patricia said. "I don't say that enough." She paused again. "I don't say it at all, probably." Emily looked up at her. Patricia's expression was uncomfortable in the way of someone who was not accustomed to sincerity, but had decided for one moment to attempt it. "I know we're hard on you," Patricia continued. "The family. I know we make things harder than they need to be. It's fine. It's not actually." She straightened up. "But I don't know how to fix that tonight. I just wanted to say you did well. With him." She moved away. Emily watched her go. She felt unexpectedly the back of her throat tighten. She was not going to cry at Rachel's wedding. She refused. She went to the restroom. She stood at the sink and ran cold water over her wrists, a trick she had learned from a senior nurse years ago when emotions arrived in the middle of shifts and you needed to reset without showing it. And she looked at herself in the mirror. 29 years old. Blue dress with a repaired seam. Hair she had styled herself at 6 in the morning because she'd had a shift until 5 and there was no time for anything more. A woman who showed up. A woman who kept showing up. That has to count for something, she told herself. She turned the water off. She walked back into the ballroom. And that was when she saw him. He was standing near the wall on the far side of the room, slightly apart from the nearest cluster of guests, holding a glass of water. Not wine, she noted, not champagne from the passing trays, with the stillness of a man who was watching without appearing to watch. He was tall. Dark suit perfectly fitted the kind of tailoring that didn't announce itself, but was impossible not to notice. Dark hair. A face that was striking wasn't quite the right word. It was a face that had weight to it. Angles and stillness, and an attention in the eyes that cut across the room with uncomfortable precision. He was looking at her. Not in the way that men sometimes looked at women at weddings, the brief reflexive glance of opportunity or boredom or habit. He was looking at her the way someone looked when they had been watching for a while. Emily looked back at him for exactly 2 seconds and then looked away and returned to her table and told herself it meant nothing. The band shifted into something with more rhythm. More couples moved onto the floor. Daniel and Lauren danced well together. Of course they did. Lauren looked like a woman who was good at everything she decided to be good at. Emily watched the dance floor. She became aware at a certain point that someone had stopped at the edge of her table. She looked up. It was him. Up close, the weight of his presence was even more pronounced. He was not performing anything, he was simply standing there in that fitted black suit, with those watchful dark eyes, and nothing about him was asking for her approval, which somehow made him more difficult to look away from. "You've been sitting here for almost 2 hours, he said. His voice was low and unhurried, the kind of voice that didn't feel the need to fill space. Emily blinked. "Excuse me? At this table?" He glanced at the empty chairs around her. "Mostly alone." "I'm fine, thank you." I didn't ask if you were fine. He paused. I'm Adrian Moretti. He said the name the way people said names they expected to land with some weight. It landed. Emily knew that name. She worked at a hospital in Chicago. She heard things. She had colleagues who had treated people who moved through the margins of the world that name was attached to. She had never met anyone from that world directly. She kept her face entirely neutral. Emily Carter, she said. I know, he said. She stared at him. You've been pointed out, he said simply. The bride mentioned you. That at least was plausible. She chose to accept it. What can I do for you, Mr. Moretti? He pulled out the empty chair beside her, the same chair Daniel had occupied, which had apparently become the chair of the evening for men who arrived without warning and sat down. He did not ask. But unlike Daniel, there was no performance in it. No calculation of what sitting down said about him. He simply sat as though he had decided to, and that was the beginning and end of the decision. I have a situation, he said. Most people do. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something shorter. My family is here tonight, he said. Table 4. She glanced. Table 4 was near the front. Several people older arranged with the comfortable authority of people who expected good tables. They've been pressuring me for 2 years to introduce them to someone, Adrian said. A relationship. Evidence, I suppose, that I have attachments, vulnerabilities. Emily looked at him steadily. Why would you want your enemies to know your vulnerabilities? I didn't say enemies, I said family. Are those different things? The not quite smile again. More pronounced this time. You're sharper than I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone who'd been ground down. She held his gaze. I haven't been ground down. No, he agreed. You haven't. He set his glass on the table. Here is my situation, plainly. There is a business rival, a man named Caruso, who has been spreading a particular rumor. That I am unreachable. That I have no personal stakes. That dealing with me is like dealing with a machine. He paused. It's creating problems. What kind of problems? The kind that become complicated. He looked at her directly. If I walk into tonight's reception with a woman beside me, someone my family believes is significant, several things shift, rumors quiet, pressure lifts. My family stops introducing me to their friends' daughters. Emily absorbed this. And in exchange, she said, in exchange, he said, you spend the next hour as my wife. The word sat between them. Not permanently, he added. One evening. Your wife, or whatever term is more comfortable. My companion, the woman I'm with. The person who makes your ex-fiancé understand clearly that you have not spent the last 4 years simply waiting. Emily went very still. How do you know about Daniel? I told you. The bride mentioned you. He paused. She told me you were her oldest friend. That you were the bravest person she knew. That you'd been through more in the last 4 years than most people handled in a lifetime. He picked up his glass. She also mentioned him, and pointed him out, and said some things about him that were not polite. Emily thought about Rachel somewhere across this room in her extraordinary white dress, having apparently described her best friend's history to a man like Adrian Moretti. She didn't know whether to be mortified or grateful. Why me? She said. Because you're at this table, he said, and you haven't left. Most people would have left by now. I'm staying for Rachel. I know that too. He looked at her. You stayed because leaving felt like letting them win, and you don't do that. The accuracy of that hit somewhere she hadn't expected. She looked away, looked at the dance floor. Daniel was laughing again. She thought about Sophie asleep at home with the nightlight on. She thought about the repaired seam on her dress. She thought about 30 seconds and then behaving. She turned back to Adrian Moretti. 1 hour, she said. 1 hour, he agreed. I'm not pretending to be in love with you. I'm not asking you to. I won't lie to Rachel. I'm not asking you to do that either. And whatever happens after tonight, she said carefully, I don't know you. I don't know your world. I'm a nurse with a 6-year-old and a repaired dress. And I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and that is all I am. This is not 1 hour, he said again, quietly. That's all I'm asking for. She breathed. 1 hour, she said. He stood up and extended his hand. She looked at it for exactly 2 seconds. Then she took it. Chate. The moment they stepped onto the dance floor, Emily understood that Adrian Moretti was a man accustomed to being noticed and equally accustomed to making that noticing look effortless. He did not announce their arrival. He did not position them deliberately in Daniel's line of sight. He simply placed his hand against the small of her back and guided her into the movement of the song with the calm authority of someone who had been doing things like this since before she was paying attention. And people noticed. She felt it. The shift in the room, the redirected glances, her family's table going momentarily still. She kept her spine straight and her expression composed and moved with him, and told herself this was no different from a difficult shift you performed competence until competence arrived. You're very tense, Adrian said quietly. I'm fine. You said that already. It's still true. Relax your shoulders, he said. Not a command. A direction the way a partner in a procedure said, hold there or keep it steady. She relaxed her shoulders. Better, he said. Are we convincing your family? He glanced toward table 4 without turning his head. My uncle has already stopped mid-sentence. My aunt is watching us with the expression she gets when something surprises her. So yes. And your business rival? Caruso isn't here, but word travels. She processed that. So this is less about tonight and more about what people say tomorrow. Isn't most of life? She considered. Some things happen in the moment. Like what? Like? She thought about Sophie's face when she woke up, and the first thing she said every morning was, Mama, and it was always said like confirmation, like the world was confirmed to still be in order, because Emily was there. Like knowing someone loves you, that's immediate. That's the moment. Adrian was quiet for several steps. You think about her constantly, he said. Emily looked up at him. Your daughter, he said. You've checked your phone 3 times since I sat down. She's 6. She's with a neighbor. She's fine, he said. It was not a dismissal. It was strange. It sounded like something said to reassure rather than to redirect. You don't know that, Emily said. I know that a woman who repaired her own dress and arrived 8 minutes early to a wedding she was dreading because she refused to be the kind of person who runs from things. Adrian said is the kind of woman who made absolutely certain her child was safe before she came here tonight. Emily stopped dancing. Not dramatically, she just stopped. He stopped with her. They were still in the middle of the dance floor and she was looking up at him and she said, How long were you watching? Long enough to understand what I was looking at, he said. And what were you looking at? A pause. Something moved behind his eyes that she couldn't categorize. Someone who deserved a better table, he said. The band moved into the next song. Around them, other couples continued to move. She and Adrian stood momentarily still in the middle of the floor, and then he raised his hand slightly, and the question was there. Continue, and she answered it by letting him lead her back into the movement. They danced for 20 minutes. Then they were at the bar, which was quieter, and Adrian handed her a glass of club soda without asking, and she discovered he had been watching closely enough to notice she hadn't touched the wine all evening. You work tomorrow, he said. 7 a.m. Emergency department. You know a lot about me for someone I met 20 minutes ago. Rachel is thorough when she describes people she loves. Emily looked at her glass. We've barely spoken in the last 2 years. I know, he said. That seems to bother you more than it bothers her. She looked up. What does that mean? It means she talked about you tonight the way people talk about someone they still carry, he said. Like you're not someone she lost. Just someone she's not standing next to right now. Emily's chest did something complicated. She looked away. She's happy, Emily said, with Thomas. There they suit each other. And you're happy for her. I am. And a little bit alone in a room full of people who have arranged their lives in ways yours hasn't gone. You're very direct, Emily said. I don't have patience for the alternative. She turned and looked at him head on. This strange, watchful man with the weight of a city behind his name, standing at a bar drinking water, saying the actual thing. Why are you really here? She said. You didn't need me to be your wife tonight. A man like you walks into a room and the story tells itself. You don't need... She gestured between them. This. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. No, he said. No, you don't need it. Or no, that's not why. No, I didn't need it, he said. But you did. The silence between them had edges. I didn't ask for your help, Emily said carefully. I know. I don't need... I know that too. He turned his glass slowly in his hand. But I watched that man sit down beside you and say his practiced apology that was really about making himself feel better, and I watched you receive it with more grace than it deserved, and I watched him walk away looking relieved, and I thought... He stopped. What? Emily said. I thought that some people move through rooms and take up exactly the space they deserve, he said. And some people have been told for long enough that their space is small, that they've stopped checking whether that's true. Emily did not respond immediately. She was parsing the sentence, looking for the angle. Men like this, men with names that carried weight, men with suits that cost more than her rent, men who arrived beside you at charity bars and spoke with the precision of people who were never accidental, those men always had an angle. What do you get out of this? She asked. Tonight, he considered. An hour not standing alone at a family function, which as it turns out is a feeling I recognize. She studied him. You're never alone, she said. Everywhere I looked before you came over, people were watching you, tracking you. You walked in and the room knew. That's not the same thing, he said quietly. And the way he said it, the absolute absence of self-pity in it, just an honest statement of a fact he had apparently made his peace with, made it more true than anything either of them had said all evening. Emily looked at him. She thought about Sophie's nightlight. She thought about the repaired seam. She thought about that specific moment after Rachel said, I do, when she had looked at the empty chair and thought I am so tired of sitting in rooms alone. You said 1 hour, she said. I said 1 hour. It's been 40 minutes. 20 minutes left. She set her glass down. Ask me something real, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You know about my ex. You know about my daughter. You know I work nights and I arrived early and I didn't touch the wine. She looked at him directly. Ask me something that isn't surveillance. Something shifted in his expression, a small recalibration, like a man who had not expected to be challenged from that direction. What do you want? He said. Emily blinked. That's your real question. What do you want? He repeated. Not for Sophie, not for your career, not to prove to your family or to him. He didn't gesture, but they both knew who him referred to. That you're fine. What do you want? The question sat in the air between them. Emily opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. I don't know, she said. And her voice, to her own surprise, cracked slightly on the last word. Not enough to notice if you weren't watching closely, but he was watching closely. That's honest, he said. It's pathetic, she said. It's not. I'm 29 years old and I can't answer the question. You're 29 years old and you've spent every available unit of energy on keeping someone else safe and loved and certain the world is still in order, he said. You haven't had the luxury of the question. He paused. That's not pathetic. That's a kind of courage most people don't recognize because it doesn't look like the kind they make movies about. Emily pressed her lips together. She looked at the ceiling for exactly 2 seconds. She looked back at him. Your hour is almost up, she said. Almost, he agreed. After this we go back to being strangers. He studied her. If that's what you want, it's what makes sense. Those aren't the same thing, he said. You just told me you don't know what you want. So what makes sense is a placeholder. She looked at him for a long, measured moment. Who are you? She said. Not what are you, not what is your world. She had asked the earlier question and she knew the answer, and she had made the decision to stand here anyway. She asked who. Adrian Moretti looked at Emily Carter in the middle of a reception hall with the band playing something slow and the room full of couples and table 12 empty across the floor, and he said, "Someone who has been told for long enough what kind of man he is that he stopped checking whether that's true either." Emily breathed. Something shifted. Not dramatically. Not the way it shifted in the stories she sometimes read to Sophie at bedtime, where everything resolved in a single moment. Just a small interior shift. Like a door that hadn't been opened in a long time, moving slightly in a frame. "The hour is up," she said. "I know. I should get back to my table." "You should?" Neither of them moved immediately. Then she straightened. She smoothed the front of her dress. She looked at him with the steady directness of a woman who had learned to maintain her composure in rooms that were not designed for her comfort. "Thank you," she said. She considered. "For the dancing." "Thank you for the company," he said. She nodded once. She turned. She had taken exactly 4 steps back toward table 12 when his voice reached her. "Emily." She stopped. "The city comment," he said. "When you get home tonight, check your messages." She turned halfway. "What?" "A threat was made," he said. It was said quietly, evenly, with none of the drama she might have expected. "Against someone attending this event tonight. My people intercepted it 2 hours ago. It was handled before you arrived. But I want you to know your daughter's address was in the files they found." The air left the room, or it felt that way. Emily turned all the way around. "What?" she said. "It has been handled," Adrian said. "There is a car outside your neighbor's building right now. Nothing is going to happen. But you deserve to know." Emily stared at him. "Who?" "A man named Reyes. He has a problem with someone at this wedding that has nothing to do with you. Your name appeared because of your connection to Rachel." He paused. "Again handled, resolved. Your daughter is safe." Emily's hands were shaking. She looked down at them. She made them stop. "Why are you telling me this?" she said. "If it's handled." "Because you're her mother," he said. "And you deserve to know when someone's eyes have been on your child, even when the danger is past." Emily looked at him for a long time. She thought about Sophie asleep with the nightlight on. She thought about the word handled coming from this man with this name in this world. She thought about how she had believed completely that the most difficult thing about tonight was going to be sitting alone at table 12. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she said. "You don't," he said. "But I am." She breathed. "I want to leave," she said. "I'll have a car ready in 10 minutes," he said. "I don't need your car." "No," he said. "But the man outside your neighbor's building is mine, and he won't let an unfamiliar driver through the perimeter without clearance. So it would be easier if the car is mine." Emily stood in the middle of a wedding reception in a repaired blue dress and understood that the evening had become something she had not planned for and had no framework to navigate. She looked at Adrian Moretti. 10 minutes, she said. 10 minutes, he confirmed. She walked back to table 12. She picked up her envelope, Rachel's card, 4 drafts you deserve every happiness, and she tucked it into her purse. She looked out at the dance floor one last time. Daniel was still dancing with Lauren. They looked easy together, comfortable. She hoped with something that surprised her with its completeness, that they stayed that way. She picked up her purse. She found Rachel at the edge of the dance floor between songs flushed and radiant holding Thomas's hand, and she said, "I have to go, but you are extraordinary tonight. You are so beautiful. I love you." Rachel grabbed her and held on. "I saw you with Adrian. Rachel said into her ear. I know you told him about me, Emily said back. Was I wrong to? Emily pulled back and looked at her. I'll tell you everything later, she said. I promise. Rachel searched her face. Whatever she saw there made her nod. Go, she said. Text me when you're home. Emily walked toward the exit. She did not look at table 12. She did not look at Daniel. She pushed through the main doors of the Grand Meridian Ballroom and stepped out into the Chicago night air, which was cool and real and smelled like the city rather than flowers and champagne, and she stood on the steps and breathed. A black car was already waiting. She walked down the steps. The driver opened the door. She got in, and as the car pulled away from the venue, her phone buzzed. An unknown number, a text message that said simply, "She's been asleep since 8. Nightlight is on." She said, "Tell Mama I love her," before she closed her eyes. Emily pressed the phone against her chest. She did not cry, but it was close. It was very close. She arrived at her neighbor's building to find a man she didn't recognize standing near the entrance. Dark jacket. Unreadable expression, the particular stillness of someone who was not waiting for anyone, but was simply there. He nodded once when she stepped out of the car and moved aside. She went upstairs. She opened the door to the room where Sophie slept. The nightlight cast everything in pale gold. Sophie was curled on her side with one arm wrapped around the worn stuffed rabbit she had slept with every night for 3 years. Her dark hair was fanned out against the pillow. She was breathing the deep, even breath of a child who had no reason to be anything other than safe. Emily stood in the doorway. She stood there for a long time. Then she walked to the side of the bed, crouched down, and pressed her lips very gently to Sophie's forehead without waking her. I'm here, she thought. I've got you. She straightened up. She walked back to the kitchen and sat down at the table without turning on the light and sat in the dark for a while. Adrian Moretti had said the threat was handled. He had said her daughter's address was in a file. He had said it was resolved. She believed him. She didn't know why she had known him for less than 2 hours, and everything she knew about his world said she should be afraid of it, and she had agreed to 1 hour, and the hour was over. But she believed him. That was a fact she was going to have to think carefully about. Her phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. Good night, Emily Carter. She looked at the screen for a long moment. She typed, "Thank you." She set the phone down. She sat in her dark kitchen with her daughter asleep down the hall, and the sounds of the city outside, and the feeling of a door that hadn't been opened in a long time, slightly ajar. She didn't know what she wanted. She had said that out loud tonight to a man she shouldn't have trusted, and he had not used it against her. He had just held it. That's honest, he had said. Emily sat in the dark. For the first time in a long time, she let herself wonder what the answer might be. Banafe. She didn't sleep. Not really. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling and replayed the evening in pieces, Rachel's veil catching the light. Daniel's practiced apology, the weight of Adrian Moretti's hand at the small of her back, and underneath all of it, one sentence that would not stop running through her mind. Your daughter's address was in the files they found. She had checked the locks on the apartment door 3 times before she finally lay down. She had checked Sophie twice. She had sat on the edge of her own bed and breathed through the specific controlled way she breathed through difficult shifts, and she had told herself that it was handled, that he had said it was handled, that Sophie was fine, and the nightlight was on, and the man in the dark jacket outside the building was apparently still there, because when she'd looked out the window at 2 in the morning, she had seen him. She trusted that. She didn't know why. She was still thinking about why when her alarm went off at 5:45. She got up. She started the coffee. She packed Sophie's school bag for the day, even though it was Saturday, and there was no school because her hands needed something to do. She stood at the kitchen counter and drank the first cup standing up the way she always did, and she looked at her phone. The unknown number had not messaged again. She had not expected it to. She had said thank you, and he had said good night, and that was the end of it. 1 hour. That was the deal. She washed her cup. She heard Sophie begin to stir down the hall. That was the end of it. Sophie appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:22. Rabbit in one hand, hair going in 4 different directions, wearing the purple pajamas with the stars on them that had gotten slightly too short at the ankles, but still worked. "Mama?" "Good morning, baby." Sophie crossed the kitchen and pressed herself into Emily's side, without further introduction, the way she did every morning, not asking for a hug exactly, just arriving, installing herself, confirming the world was still in order. Emily wrapped her arm around her and pressed her lips to the top of her head. "I've got you," she thought. "I've always got you." "Did you have fun at the wedding?" Sophie asked into her side. Rachel was beautiful. "Was there cake?" There was cake. Sophie pulled back and looked up at her with the direct assessing gaze she had apparently developed in the womb. "Did you eat some?" "I had a piece." "Was it good?" "It was very good." Sophie nodded, apparently satisfied with the welfare report. "Can we have pancakes?" "We can have pancakes." Emily turned toward the stove. She did not think about the man in the dark jacket outside. She did not think about files or addresses or a world that had apparently intersected with hers last night in ways she still couldn't fully process. She made pancakes. She kept her hands busy. That was what she knew how to do. Her phone rang at 9:15. Not the unknown number. A number she had never seen before, different from the first, with a Chicago area code that didn't belong to anyone in her contacts. She almost let it go to voicemail. She didn't. "Emily Carter," she answered. Nurse voice. Steady and professional, out of pure reflex. "Ms. Carter." The voice on the other end was a woman's, clear, precise, the particular efficiency of someone who scheduled and organized for a living. "My name is Vera. I work for Mr. Moretti. He asked me to call this morning to confirm that the security arrangement outside your building has been extended through the weekend as a precaution, and to let you know that his people have completed the full review of the Reyes situation. There is nothing further to be concerned about." Emily stood very still in the kitchen doorway. From the living room she could hear Sophie narrating something to her rabbit. "He had someone call me," Emily said. "Yes, ma'am. On a Saturday morning. Mr. Moretti wanted to make sure you weren't concerned after last night." Emily pressed her fingers against the edge of the doorframe. "Tell Mr. Moretti that I appreciate the update, and that the security outside my building is not necessary anymore." A slight pause. "I'll pass that along, though I should mention Mr. Moretti typically doesn't revise security arrangements based on the preferences of the person being protected. Then you can also tell him," Emily said evenly, "that I'm not a person who typically accepts being managed without being consulted." Another pause, slightly longer. "I'll pass that along as well," Vera said. And Emily had the distinct impression that the woman was just barely amused. The call ended. Emily looked at her phone, then she looked at the wall. Then she went back into the living room because Sophie had gone quiet, which with a 6-year-old was never a good sign. Sophie was fine. She had simply decided to reorganize Emily's bookshelf by color. "Sophie, it looks better this way." "We'll discuss that later. Come have your pancakes." Emily put the phone face down on the counter. She sat across from her daughter and watched her eat pancakes with the concentrated seriousness she brought to most things, and she thought about the word protected and what it felt like to have it applied to her by someone she had known for less than 3 hours. It felt strange. It also felt, and she was not ready to examine this too closely, like something she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The message came at 11, not from Vera, from the original number. "I heard you told Vera I was managing you without consulting you." Emily stared at it. Then, "She's right. I apologize." She read it twice. She typed, "Did you just apologize to me through text?" The response came immediately. "I'm capable of apologies. They're just usually shorter than most people expect." Emily sat back. Sophie had moved on from the bookshelf and was now in her room conducting what appeared to be a formal meeting between her stuffed animals. Emily could hear small, serious Sophie voices assigning roles and responsibilities. She typed, "The security outside isn't necessary." I know you believe that. It's not a belief. It's a statement. Reyes had 3 associates. 2 are accounted for. 1 hasn't been located yet. Emily looked at that sentence for a long time. What does accounted for mean? It means they're not a concern. That's not an answer. No, he wrote back. It's not. She typed, I need to know what world I stepped into last night. A long pause. Longer than the others. Then, can I call you? She looked at Sophie's closed bedroom door. She typed, give me 10 minutes. She went to Sophie's door and knocked. Baby, I need to make a call. Can you watch your show for a bit? Sophie's face appeared at the door with the gravity of someone being asked to take on a significant responsibility. The animal one. Whichever one you want. Okay, Sophie said. But Mama, yeah. You look like you're thinking very hard about something. Emily blinked. I'm fine. Sophie studied her with those dark eyes that saw too much. Okay, she said again and disappeared back into her room. Emily went to the kitchen. She sat down. She dialed. He answered on the first ring. Emily. Just her name. No preamble. Tell me, she said. He told her. Not everything. She understood as he spoke that everything was not something he shared with anyone. But he told her enough. He told her that his name in Chicago carried specific weight in specific circles. That those circles operated by rules most people didn't know existed. That Reyes was a man who had developed a grievance against someone connected to last night's wedding. A business matter, an old contract money that had changed hands badly, and that Reyes had compiled information on everyone who might be used as leverage, including people connected to Rachel, including Emily. He didn't target you specifically, Adrian said. You were a file, a name, a way to reach someone else. And now, Reyes is not a problem. His 2 associates are not a problem. The third, he paused. We're looking. And while we're looking, there is a man outside your building. Emily stared at her kitchen wall. Adrian. Yes. Last night was 1 hour. That was the deal. The deal changed when your name was in his files. I didn't agree to that change. I know. His voice was steady, unhurried. The voice of someone who was not going to be argued into abandoning this position, but was not going to argue back either. I'm not asking for your agreement. I'm telling you what is already true. You can be angry about it. I'm not angry, she said. I don't know what I am. That seems to be a recurring theme for you. She almost laughed. It surprised her. That's not I know what I feel most of the time. This is a specific situation. What are you feeling right now? He said. She thought about it honestly. She had promised herself somewhere around 2 in the morning to stop performing fine. Scared, she said. And embarrassed that I'm scared because I've handled difficult things before, and this should be no different. It's different because it's Sophie, he said. The simplicity of that, the way he said her daughter's name quietly and without drama, just as a fact, hit her somewhere unguarded. Yes, she said. Then let the man stay outside the building, he said. Not because you need protection, because you can let yourself have it this once and it costs you nothing. Emily pressed her hand flat against the kitchen table. 1 weekend, she said. However long it takes to find the 3rd associate. And then it's finished, he said. And you go back to your life, and I go back to mine. And last night is what it was. She breathed. What was it? She said. Last night. A pause. An hour that ran long, he said. She thought that was going to be all. Then he said, and the most honest conversation I've had in longer than I can tell you. Emily sat with that. I have to go, she said. Sophie will start a building project if I leave her alone too long. Building project? Last time she reorganized the bookshelf by color. Before that she rearranged the kitchen cabinet so everything was in size order. She has opinions about systems. A beat. And then quietly, unexpectedly, she sounds like you. Emily closed her eyes for just a second. Goodbye, Adrian, she said. Goodbye, Emily. She hung up. She sat at the kitchen table. Down the hall, Sophie had apparently abandoned the show and was explaining something at length to her rabbit, in a voice that carried the full authority of a person who knew exactly what she wanted. Emily listened to her daughter talk to a stuffed rabbit in the particular confident voice of a child who had never once doubted she deserved to be heard, and she thought I did something right. Whatever else she had gotten wrong, she had done that right. Sunday passed quietly. The man in the dark jacket outside had been replaced by a different man, same jacket, same stillness. Emily had stopped looking. Monday morning, she went back to work. She had a 12-hour shift. The emergency department at Northwestern Memorial did not pause for personal situations, and neither did Emily. And by the time she walked through those doors at 6:55 a.m., she had managed to place the events of the previous Friday night into a specific compartment in her mind, labeled Address Later, and she worked her shift with the full attention it required. She was good at this work. She had always been good at it. There was something about the emergency department, the absolute necessity of the present moment, the way it demanded everything you had and left no room for anything you were carrying that she had loved since her first week as a nursing student. She reset IVs. She assisted with a trauma case in Bay 4. She talked a 14-year-old girl through a panic attack so severe it had presented as cardiac symptoms sitting beside her, calmly saying, "You're okay. You're still here. I've got you," until the girl's breathing evened out and she started crying. The relieved, exhausted tears of someone who had survived something terrifying. She had lunch in 11 minutes, standing at the nurse's station. She sent a quick text to her neighbor confirming Sophie's pickup time. She went back to work. At 4:30, she was reviewing a chart at the desk when her charge nurse, Donna, 22 years in the ER, the most unimpressible woman Emily had ever met, walked past and dropped a card on the counter in front of her. A small envelope. Her name on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize. "Someone dropped this at the front desk for you," Donna said, already moving toward the next task. "Nice-looking man. Front desk said he didn't leave a name." Emily looked at the envelope. She looked at Donna's retreating back. She picked up the envelope. Inside was a card, plain white. 4 words. "How was your shift?" And below it, a phone number she already had in her recent calls. Emily stood at the nurse's station with a card from a Mafia boss in her hand, and 3 patients waiting, and the particular fluorescent hum of the emergency department filling the air around her, and she did something she had not done in recent memory. She smiled, not because it was appropriate, not because she had decided to, because it happened. She slipped the card into her scrub pocket. She went back to work. She texted him from the parking garage at the end of her shift. "You sent a card to my workplace." His response came before she reached her car. "I sent a card. You happen to work there. That's a very thin distinction. How was your shift?" She stopped walking. She stood in the parking garage and looked at those 3 words and thought about the 14-year-old girl whose panic attack had looked like a heart attack, and the man in Bay 4 who had gone home to his family, and the 11-minute lunch, and the chart she had reviewed 40 times, and Donna's commentary on everything, and the specific exhaustion that was actually satisfaction in a very good disguise. She typed, "Good, hard, the kind of hard that's worth it." His response, "Those are the only kinds worth anything." She started walking again. "Your man is still outside my building," she typed. "His name is Marco. He likes coffee. Black, no sugar, if you ever feel like I'm not bringing coffee to your security detail." It was a suggestion. It was an attempt to make me feel comfortable with a situation I didn't fully agree to. "Also true," he wrote back, and she could almost hear the slight almost smile in it. She got in her car. She sat for a moment without starting it. Sophie asked about the man outside. She typed. I didn't know what to tell her. A longer pause this time. Then, what did you tell her? I told her he was a neighbor who liked to stand outside. She paused, then added, she said he didn't look like a neighbor. She said he looked like a soldier who wasn't in a uniform. The pause that followed was longer. Then, she's very perceptive. I know. What did she say after that? Emily looked at her steering wheel. She said, is he protecting us, Mama? And I said, something like that. And she said, good, and went back to her breakfast. She sent the message and then immediately typed the next. She was not frightened. I want you to know that. She was reassured, which I have complicated feelings about. Why? Because she's 6, and she has already developed an instinct for when protection is necessary. That means she's noticed at some point when it wasn't there. She hadn't meant to say that much. She pressed her lips together, but he didn't respond with something dismissive or performatively empathetic. He didn't say, I'm sure she's fine, or redirect. He just wrote, you've carried a lot alone. 3 words, accurate and without decoration. Yes, Emily typed. That was never fair to you. No, she agreed. It wasn't. She started the car. I'll let Marco know about the coffee, she typed. But I'm still not bringing it myself. She could almost hear him. Good night, Emily. Good night. She drove home. So, she brought Marco coffee on Tuesday morning. She did not acknowledge this as the thing it was, which was a capitulation. She told herself it was basic human decency. A man was standing outside in October in Chicago, and she walked past him every morning. And that decency was not the same as comfort, and comfort was not the same as acceptance. Marco took the cup with both hands and said, "Thank you, Ms. Carter," with the quiet sincerity of a man who had not expected it. And Emily nodded and walked past him and went upstairs and texted Adrian, "I brought coffee. Don't say anything." His response, "I didn't say anything. You were about to. Possibly." She put her phone away. It was Wednesday when everything shifted again. She was picking Sophie up from her after-school program, a community arts class at the library, 2 blocks from their building. Something Sophie had started in September and loved with the totalizing passion she brought to anything she had decided mattered when a black car pulled up beside her. Not Marco's position. A different car. And before Emily could process whether she should be alarmed, the window came down and Adrian Moretti was looking at her from the back seat with an expression that was for the first time since she had met him, something she could only describe as uncertain. Sophie was holding Emily's hand. She looked at the car. She looked up at Emily. She looked back at the car. "Who's that?" Sophie said. Emily looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at Sophie. And then Sophie said with the complete directness of a 6-year-old, who had not yet learned that some questions were not supposed to be asked out loud, "Are you the man who sent the other man to protect us?" The silence was very brief. "Yes," Adrian said. Sophie considered this for a moment with the seriousness of a judge reviewing evidence. "Thank you," she said. "Mama worries a lot at night. It probably helped her sleep." Emily's entire face went hot. "Sophie, it's true," Sophie said, entirely untroubled. Adrian looked at Emily over Sophie's head. There was something in his expression that had not been there before, something warm, quietly devastated in the specific way that things which are unexpectedly good sometimes devastated people who had stopped expecting them. "Can I?" he started. Emily said no. At the same moment, Sophie said yes. They both looked at Sophie. "He can walk with us," Sophie announced. "It's only 2 blocks. Baby, Mr. Moretti is—" "I'd like to," Adrian said. "If that's all right." He was looking at Emily. Not at Sophie, at Emily. The question was entirely for her. Sophie's vote had been cast, and she clearly considered it final, but Adrian was waiting for Emily's answer. Emily looked at this man, this watchful, careful, deeply strange man who had sent coffee instructions for his security detail, and dropped a card at her workplace, and apologized through text, and apparently knew that Marco liked his coffee black, standing at the window of his car on a Wednesday afternoon in October. 2 blocks, she said. He got out of the car. He walked beside her. Sophie inserted herself between them after approximately 30 seconds, taking Emily's hand on one side, and then without asking, without hesitation, the way 6-year-olds did things that adults would agonize over for months, reaching up and taking Adrian's hand on the other side. Adrian went very still, just for a second, just a fraction of a second, as if something in him had been caught completely off guard. Then he held on. "I'm Sophie," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm Adrian." "That's an old name," Sophie said. "My teacher at school is named Barbara, and she says old names are the best ones because they've been used by lots of interesting people." "Barbara sounds smart," Adrian said. "She is. She knows how to draw horses correctly. Most people draw horse legs wrong." "Do they?" "Yes, the knees go the wrong way on the back legs. People forget." "I'll remember that," he said. Emily walked beside them and watched her daughter conduct a detailed tutorial on correct horse anatomy to a man who ran the Chicago underworld, and she felt something that she did not have a word for immediately. Something that was partly absurd and partly terrifying, and partly the most unexpectedly quietly right thing she had experienced in years. She found the word later. She filed it away for later. 2 blocks took 12 minutes. Sophie had a lot to cover. She moved from horse anatomy to the formal proceedings of her stuffed animal meetings to the library's new fish tank. "They have a fish named Gerald, and he looks worried all the time, but the librarian says that's just his face." And Adrian listened to all of it with an attention that Emily recognized, because it was the same attention he had turned on her at the wedding. Absolute, genuine, missing nothing. At the door to their building, Sophie released both their hands and turned to Adrian with the ceremony of someone concluding a formal visit. "You can come back," she said, "if you want." "Sophie," Emily said. "I'm being polite," Sophie said. "Mrs. Kim says invitations are polite." "Mrs. Kim is right," Adrian said. "Thank you, Sophie." Sophie nodded, apparently satisfied, and turned and went inside ahead of Emily. Emily stayed on the step. She looked at Adrian. "She makes her own decisions," Emily said. "I want you to know that's not—" "I didn't tell her." "I know you didn't," he said. "She just—" Emily stopped. "She has no filter. She says whatever." "Emily." His voice was quiet. "She's extraordinary." Emily closed her mouth. She looked at him. "She's exactly like you," he said. "She looks at something and she decides what she thinks, and she says it. No performance, no calculation." He paused. "I don't meet many people like that." Emily looked at the door Sophie had gone through. "She scares me sometimes," Emily said honestly. "How certain she is, at 6. I don't know if I'm teaching her the right—" "You are," he said. "You don't know that. I know that a child who looks at a stranger and says, 'Thank you for protecting my mama,' has been raised by someone who taught her that gratitude is not weakness," he said. "And that protection is something you can accept without it meaning you're dependent. That takes a specific kind of parenting." Emily pressed her lips together. "I should go in," she said. "Yes. Sophie will investigate if I'm gone too long." "I believe that completely." She started to turn, then stopped. "Why did you come today? You could have texted." He was quiet for a moment. "I wanted to see how you were," he said. "In person, without the phone between it." "Why does it matter how I am?" He looked at her, the same look from the wedding, the one that took everything in and gave back only what it chose to. "Because you matter." Simple as that. No elaboration, no justification. Emily breathed. "I'll text you tonight," she said. "Okay," he said. She went inside. She texted him at 9:45 after Sophie was asleep, and the dishes were done, and the apartment was quiet. She asked about you at dinner. What did she ask whether you had a family? I said I didn't know. She said that was sad. I said some people preferred it. She said Emily stopped. Started again. She said, maybe he just hasn't found the right family yet. Then she ate her green beans. A long pause on his end. Then, She's going to be someone remarkable when she grows up. She already is, Emily typed. Yes, he wrote back. She is. Emily sat on her couch in the quiet apartment. She had a day off tomorrow. She was going to take Sophie to the park if it wasn't too cold. She was going to do laundry. She was going to be completely ordinary and completely herself, and none of the last 5 days were going to be anything other than a strange tangent from her actual life. She typed Adrian. Yes, what is this? She didn't define this. She didn't need to. He would understand the question. The pause was long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then, I don't know yet. Is that honest? It's the most honest thing I can say right now. She looked at the ceiling. That's enough for tonight, she typed. Good night, Emily. Good night. She put the phone on the charger and lay back and stared at the ceiling and thought about hands. Sophie reaching up and taking his without asking the way she did with people she had decided were safe. Sophie, who had her father's dark hair and Emily's stubbornness, and apparently her own entirely independent judgment about who belonged in the space around her. Emily trusted that judgment. She always had. She was still thinking about that when her phone lit up again. Not Adrian's number. A number she didn't recognize at all. She sat up. She answered. Ms. Carter. Male voice. Flat, deliberate. Nothing like Vera's efficiency. Something colder underneath it. I think you should know what kind of man you've been spending time with this week. Her hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? She said. A friend, the voice said. Someone who wants you to understand what you and your daughter have gotten involved in before it's too late to walk away. Emily stood up. She walked to Sophie's door. She pressed it open. Nightlight on. Sophie breathing evenly, rabbit tucked against her side. She walked back to the kitchen. What do you want? She said. I want you to ask Adrian Moretti what happened to the last woman who trusted him, the man said. I want you to ask him about a woman named Claire Reeves. And what happened to her when she became inconvenient? A pause. Ask him. See what he tells you. The line went dead. Emily stood in her kitchen. The apartment was completely quiet. Sophie was sleeping. Marco was downstairs. She looked at Adrian's number in her recent calls. She looked at the unknown number. She looked at Sophie's door. Then she sat down at the kitchen table in the dark, and for a very long time she did not move. She needed to think. She needed to think very carefully, because the question the voice had planted was already growing, wrapping itself around everything that had happened this week, the warmth of it, the unexpected rightness of it. Sophie taking his hand, and she knew, with the clear-eyed practicality of a woman who had learned not to be blindsided twice, that she could not let herself feel her way through this. She needed to know. She needed to ask. She needed to look at his face when he answered. She picked up the phone. She called him. He answered on the second ring. Emily. His voice even at this hour was steady, present. What's wrong? She took a breath. I need to ask you about Claire Reeves, she said. The silence that followed was not the silence of someone surprised. It was the silence of someone who had been waiting perhaps for a long time for that name to arrive. How do you know that name? He said. Someone called me, she said. 5 minutes ago. Unknown number. He told me to ask you what happened to her. Another silence. Emily. Adrian. Her voice was level. I need you to tell me the truth. Whatever it is, I need to hear it from you. A long pause. Then, can I come over? She looked at Sophie's door. Not tonight, she said. Not with Sophie here. Then I'll tell you on the phone, he said. But I need you to hear the whole thing, not a version, not a summary, the whole thing. Yes, she said. Tell me. And he did. And he told her about Claire Reeves. He told her slowly and without deflection and without the calculated presentation of a man managing a narrative. He told her that Claire had been a woman he knew 3 years ago, not a relationship, not something romantic, but a woman who had worked adjacent to his organization through a business arrangement that she had entered into knowingly. That she had been smart and ambitious, and had understood precisely what world she was moving through. He told her that his rival at the time, not Caruso, someone older, someone no longer a problem, had decided that Claire was a vulnerability, had used her as leverage, that Adrian had made choices during that time that he could not fully defend, that he had prioritized the protection of his organization over the protection of a woman who had trusted his name to mean something. She wasn't hurt, he said. She left Chicago. I arranged for her to be financially secure. She is, to the best of my knowledge, living in Portland now, and she is safe. Emily said nothing. But she was frightened, he continued. And she was alone with that fear for a period of time when I should have been moving faster. And she never trusted me again after that. She was right not to. Emily looked at the table. Why didn't you tell me? She said. You didn't ask me about my history. Would you have offered it? A pause. I don't know. That's honest, she said. I'm trying to be. She breathed. The person who called me. Who were they? I don't know yet, he said. But I will. Is that Reyes, the third associate? Possibly. His voice was careful. Or someone Reyes is working with. I don't know yet. They're using her name to scare me away from you, Emily said. Yes. Why would they want that? He was quiet for a moment. Because you're not what they expected. Most people, when they get a call like that, run. The fact that you called me instead. He paused. You called me instead of running Emily. She absorbed that. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet, she said. I called because I need information, not because I've made a decision. I know. What happened with Claire? You let her be used because you moved too slowly. Yes. And you're telling me that wouldn't happen again. I'm telling you that I understand now what moving slowly costs, he said. That's not a promise because I don't make promises about things I can't control. But I am telling you that you and Sophie are not Claire, and the situation is different, and I am not the same man who made those choices. Emily turned that over. She was tired. It was late. Sophie would be up at 6. I need to sleep, she said. Okay. I need to think about this. I know. Don't call me tomorrow morning, she said. Let me have the morning. You'll have it, he said. She nodded, forgetting he couldn't see her. Adrian? Yes. The fact that you told me the whole thing, she said. Without me having to pull at it. Without excuses. Yes. That mattered, she said simply. A pause. Good night, Emily. Good night. She put the phone down. She sat in the dark. The night pressed in around the apartment, quiet and ordinary, Sophie breathing down the hall, the city doing what it always did outside the window. She had walked into a wedding 5 days ago, expecting to survive an evening. And now she was sitting in her kitchen at midnight, knowing a man's complicated history, knowing that someone was using that history to frighten her, knowing that her daughter had taken his hand without asking and said, "Thank you for protecting my mama." She thought about Claire Reeves. She thought about the fear of trusting someone whose world operated by different rules than the one she lived in. She thought about the specific expression on Adrian Moretti's face when Sophie had reached up and taken his hand. That fractional second of stillness. The way he had held on. Emily Carter sat in her kitchen. She was afraid. She was also underneath the fear in a place she had not been in years. She was paying attention. To herself. To what she felt. To what she wanted. She didn't have the answer yet. But for the first time since she could remember, she was asking the question for real, and that was not nothing. That was in fact everything. She didn't call him Thursday morning. She had promised herself the morning, and she took it. Got Sophie up, made oatmeal, walked her to school, came home, sat down with her second cup of coffee, and her own thoughts and no phone in her hand. She thought about Claire Reeves. She thought about the man who had called her. The flatness in his voice. the particular precision of someone who had rehearsed what they were going to say. That wasn't a person acting on impulse. That was a person executing a plan. Which meant someone had decided deliberately that Emily Carter was a problem worth addressing. That thought should have sent her running. She noticed that it didn't. She sat with that for a while. Then she called Adrian. "I thought you wanted the morning," he said. "I took it," she said. "I've decided something." "Tell me." "I'm not going to let someone I've never met make my decisions for me," she said. "That call last night was designed to frighten me. And I understand why. And I've thought about Claire, and I've thought about what you told me, and I've thought about what it means that you told me all of it without me having to work for it." She paused. "I'm not running, but I need ground rules, a beat. Name them. I need the truth, not managed information, not the version that protects me from worrying. If something is happening that affects me or Sophie, I hear it first. Not Vera. Me. Agreed. If I tell you something is too much, if this ever becomes something I can't protect Sophie from you, respect that. Immediately. No negotiation." "Agreed." "And the person who called me last night," she said. "I want to know when you find out who it was." "You'll know before anyone else," he said. She breathed. "Okay. Okay. Okay," she said again. "That's my answer." The pause on his end was short, but weighted. "Emily," he said. "Don't make it into something large," she said. "I'm just not running. That's all it is right now." "That's enough," he said. "I know it is." She hung up and finished her coffee and went to do laundry, because her life did not stop being her life, just because something unexpected had entered it, and the laundry had been waiting since Tuesday. He called her Friday at noon. "I found the third associate," he said without preamble. Her hands went still on her keyboard. She was charting at the nurse's station, 20 minutes into a rare quiet stretch. "And?" "His name is Vincent Reyes, brother of the original. He's been in the city since Monday." A pause. "He's the one who called you Wednesday night." "You're sure?" "Yes." "Is he—" She lowered her voice. "Is he going to be handled the way the others were handled?" A brief silence. "He's been located. My people have eyes on him. He won't reach you or Sophie." "That's not what I asked." "Emily, I need to know what happens to people in your world when they become problems," she said quietly. "That's not a judgment. It's information I need." He was quiet for several seconds, longer than usual. "He will be given a choice," Adrian said finally. "Leave Chicago and don't come back or face consequences that don't involve my making a decision I'd have to explain to you." She absorbed that. "You're changing how you operate because of me," she said. "I'm operating the way I should have been operating," he said. "You're making me honest about the difference." She stared at the blank section of the chart in front of her. Donna walked past with a coffee cup and shot her a sideways look that communicated in the 22-year ER veteran shorthand they had developed, "You look like your head is somewhere else." Emily gave her the look back that said, "I know. Give me 2 minutes." "What happens now?" she said. "Now the immediate situation resolves," Adrian said. "And I'd like to take you to dinner." Emily blinked. "Dinner?" "Yes. Like a date. If you're comfortable with that word." She pressed 2 fingers against her forehead. "I'm a single mother who works nights in an emergency department. My last date was 2.5 years ago, and it lasted 45 minutes because Sophie had a fever and I had to leave." "I know," he said. "I'm asking anyway." She was quiet for a moment. "Saturday," she said. "Sophie has a play date with her friend Lily from 11 to 4. I can get a neighbor to cover pickup." "Saturday," he agreed. "Somewhere quiet," she said. Not somewhere that makes a statement. Somewhere I can actually talk." "I know a place," he said. "And Adrian?" "Yes." "Don't send a car. I'll drive myself." A pause. "The security?" "I'll drive myself," she said again. calmly, firmly. "Okay," he said. She hung up. Donna appeared at her elbow with the immediacy of someone who had been waiting. "You have been on that phone for 4 minutes," Donna said, "and you've made 6 different faces, which is 4 more than you usually make in an entire shift." "It's a personal matter," Emily said. Clearly. Donna set down her cup. "Are you okay?" Emily looked at her chart, at the familiar noise of the department around her, at the life she had built carefully and stubbornly, one shift at a time. "I think so," she said. "I genuinely think so." Donna studied her for a moment. "He better be worth the faces," she said, and walked away. Emily looked back at her chart. She was smiling again. She noticed and stopped. Then let it happen anyway. Saturday arrived cold and clear. She dropped Sophie at Lily's house at 10:55, reminded Lily's mother about Sophie's allergy to tree nuts, hugged Sophie for slightly longer than necessary, and drove to the address Adrian had texted her. It was a small Italian restaurant on the north side. Not flashy, not a place that required a reservation made 6 weeks in advance or a dress she didn't own. Wood tables. Good bread. The kind of place that had been open for 30 years and didn't need to prove anything. Adrian was already there. He stood when she came in, which was something men of a certain generation did, and most men her age had stopped doing, and she wasn't sure whether she found it charming or formal, and then she decided it didn't matter. "You drove yourself," he said. "I said I would." "I know." Something in his expression settled. "Sit down." They sat. She ordered sparkling water. He ordered the same. They looked at the menus for long enough to be polite about it, and then she set hers down and looked at him. "I told Donna I had a personal matter," she said. "Donna is your charge nurse." "You know about Donna." "You've mentioned her twice," he said. Once positively, and once with the specific exasperation of someone who respects a person enormously and would never admit it to their face. Emily sat back. "I mention things and you retain them. It's a habit. Most people don't do that." "Most people aren't paying attention," he said. She looked at him across the table. Without the wedding reception around them, without Wednesday's sidewalk with Sophie between them, without the medium of a phone. Just this, a Saturday afternoon table, and 2 glasses of sparkling water, and the bread that arrived without anyone asking for it. She could see him more plainly. He was tired, not dramatically, but there was a quality behind the steadiness that she recognized from her own mirror, the particular look of someone who had been maintaining something carefully for a very long time. "When did you last do something like this?" she said. "Dinner. With someone who wasn't work or family, or," she gestured vaguely, obligation. He considered the question seriously. She appreciated that he didn't deflect it. 4 years ago, he said. Maybe 5. What happened? She decided correctly that my world asked too much of people who didn't choose it knowingly. He paused. She wasn't wrong. But you're here? You chose it knowingly, he said. Or you're choosing right now with full information. That's different. Emily pulled a piece of bread apart slowly. I didn't choose your world. I'm choosing a dinner. I'm choosing to see if there's a person here I want to know better. That's not the same as choosing your world. No, he agreed. It's not. I know that. Do you? I'm not asking you to step into anything, he said. I'm asking you to eat bread and tell me something true about yourself, and let me do the same. She looked at him. Something true, she said. Yes? She thought about it. Not performing. Not the version of herself she assembled for family events, or difficult shifts or conversations where she needed to hold ground. I used to want to be a surgeon, she said. Before Sophie. I'd been accepted to an accelerated pre-med program. I was going to defer my nursing degree and go. I had the forms filled out. What happened? Daniel happened first. Then Sophie happened, and Daniel not being there happened, and the program would have taken 4 years of full-time study, and I couldn't do 4 years of full-time study alone with a newborn. She looked at the bread in her hands. I don't regret Sophie. I want to be clear about that. Sophie is the thing I would not trade for anything, but I do sometimes—" She stopped. "Grieve the road," he said. She looked up. "Yes, exactly that. I grieve the road." "That's allowed," he said. "My mother says it's not. She says I should be grateful for what I have and stop." "Your mother is wrong," he said. Simply, without heat. Emily blinked. "You can love your life and grieve what it cost you at the same time," he said. "Those aren't opposites. Anyone who tells you otherwise is asking you to be smaller than you are." She stared at him. "Something true from you," she said finally. He was quiet for a moment. "I took over my father's organization at 24, he said. "I didn't choose it the way people choose careers. I chose it the way you choose to catch something when it falls, because it was falling, and I was standing there and I was the only one who could catch it." He paused. "My father was not a good man. Not in the ways that counted. But he built something that employed 200 people and kept 3 neighborhoods functioning. And I couldn't let it collapse just because I had moral reservations about the method." "Do you still have them?" she said. "The reservations?" "Every day," he said. "Which is different from when I started. When I started, I was too young and too angry to have reservations about anything." "What changed?" He looked at her steadily. "Watching people carry the cost of decisions I made without having to carry it themselves." The food arrived. They ate. The conversation moved not away from weight, but through it into the ordinary things that sat alongside the heavy ones. Sophie's stuffed animal meeting protocols. The fish named Gerald who looked worried. The horse anatomy tutorial. Adrian's face as she described Sophie explaining the correct anatomy to him had something in it she hadn't seen before, something unguarded. "She told me last night," Emily said, "that she thinks you seem lonely." He went still. She said, "Mama, I think your friend is like Gerald. He probably has a worried face that isn't really his real face." And then she went to sleep. Emily looked at him. "She's 6. She has no filter." "She's right," he said quietly. Emily said nothing. "I don't know how she—" He stopped, started again. "I have been doing this long enough that I stopped noticing it. The loneliness. It becomes the ambient condition. You forget it's not just how things are." "I know that feeling," Emily said. "I know you do," he said. They looked at each other across the table. This was the moment Emily thought where in a different kind of story something dramatic would happen. Where the feeling would resolve into something clear and nameable. Instead, what happened was the bread ran out. They ordered more, and Adrian told her about his uncle, who had been pressuring him to marry since the day he turned 27, and who had seen the photo from the wedding, and called him 3 times in one day. "What did you tell him?" she said. "I told him she was a nurse, and her daughter had opinions about horse anatomy, and he should leave me alone." Emily stared at him. "You told him about Sophie?" "I told him about the horse anatomy," he said. He was confused. "I considered that a successful outcome." She laughed. It came out real and full and surprised her completely. He smiled. Not the almost smile, a real one. And it changed his whole face, took the weight of it, and moved it aside for a moment. And she saw what he might have looked like before 24, before catching the falling thing, before carrying the cost. She filed that away, somewhere important. They were still sitting at the table at 3:15 when his phone buzzed. She watched his face change. Subtle, almost nothing. But she was paying attention now. "What?" she said. He looked up from the screen. "A development." "Tell me." "Vincent Reyes didn't take the offer." He set his phone face down. He reached out to a journalist instead. Someone who covers organized crime in Chicago. He's apparently offering information about my organization in exchange for protection, press attention, something. We don't know yet. Emily processed that. "What does that mean for you?" "It complicates things," he said carefully. "How complicated?" "Emily, you said the truth. Ground rule number 1. He looked at her for a moment. It means the pressure on my organization increases significantly, he said. It means business rivals who've been waiting for a weakness will see this as an opening. It means the next several weeks will require my complete attention in ways that—" He paused. "In ways that make what I'm asking of you more complicated." "You're not asking me to do anything. I'm asking you to know me," he said. "That is asking something." The restaurant had quieted around them. They were the last lunch table still occupied. "Is Sophie safe?" she said. "Yes." "Am I safe?" "Yes." "Absolutely." "Then the rest of it is your problem to solve," she said. "I'm not going to tell you to drop everything. I'm not going to make demands about your time. I know what my life looks like. I go 3 days without sleep sometimes. I know what it is to have something that asks everything of you." He looked at her. "Most people would run," he said. "You keep saying that. It keeps being true. Maybe you've been spending time with the wrong people," she said. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I think that's probably right." Yad. She was home by 4:30. Sophie came through the door at 4:55 from Lily's house, carrying a painting she had apparently made during the playdate. 2 figures tall and small standing beside something green that might have been a tree or might have been a fish tank. It was genuinely unclear. "Who are these people?" Emily asked, holding it up. "That's you," Sophie said, pointing to the taller figure. "And that's the man, Adrian." Emily looked at the painting. "Why did you paint this?" Sophie shrugged with the complete ease of someone who found the question unnecessary. "Because you were having lunch and I thought about what it looked like." Emily looked at her daughter. "Did you have a good time at Lily's?" "Yes, she has a new puppy. It bit my shoelace." "But not your foot." "No, just the lace. It was very small." Sophie took the painting back and looked at it critically. "I made his jacket too dark, but I didn't have the right brown. It looks good, baby." Sophie seemed to accept this assessment and disappeared toward her room. Emily stood in the kitchen, holding the mental image of that painting, 2 figures tall and small, standing beside something green, and she had the feeling again. The one she'd found the word for, but wasn't using yet. She sent Adrian a text. "Sophie painted a picture of us at lunch." His response came quickly. "What does it look like?" "You're there." "I'm there. There's something green." "She says she didn't have the right brown for your jacket." A pause. "Can I see it?" Emily took a photo of the painting. Sent it. A longer pause. Then, "Tell her the jacket is exactly right." Emily smiled at her phone. She went to tell Sophie. The week that followed was the week everything sped up. It began with a phone call from Adrian on Monday morning, not his usual calm, and she heard it immediately, the shifted quality of his voice. "The journalist published something," he said. "Already. A preliminary piece. Not everything Ray has offered. An opener. My name, some implication of current federal interest enough to put the story into circulation." He paused. "My uncle is calling it a crisis. My attorney is calling it manageable. My rival Caruso is calling it an opportunity." "What are you calling it?" "An inconvenience," he said. "That I should have prevented." "Can you fix it?" "Most of it," he said. "Some of it I have to wait through." A pause. "I may be difficult to reach this week. I wanted you to know before it happened, rather than after." "I understand," she said. "I'm not—" He stopped, started again, which was unusual for him. "I want you to know this has nothing to do with last Saturday. Last Saturday was the best afternoon I've had in—" "Adrian," she said. "Yes." "Handle your crisis," she said. "I'll be here." A brief silence. "I'll text when I can," he said. "Okay?" "Emily." "Yes." "Thank you for Saturday," he said. She thought about the bread and the restaurant that had been open 30 years and the real smile she had filed away somewhere important. "Me too," she said. She did not hear from him Tuesday. She worked a double shift and came home and checked her phone at midnight, and there was nothing. And she was fine with that. Completely fine. She was an adult woman with a full life, and she had not been waiting. She checked it one more time before she went to sleep. Nothing. She put it face down and slept. Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., she was making Sophie's lunch when her phone rang. Not Adrian. A number she didn't know. Ms. Carter. A woman's voice, not Vera, someone different. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Moretti's attorney. Mr. Moretti has asked us to contact you as a precaution. There was an incident last night. He's fine. He wants you to know that first. Emily's hand stopped moving. What kind of incident? She said. A confrontation with associates of the Caruso organization. Mr. Moretti sustained a minor injury. He's being treated now and is expected to be fully— How minor? Emily said. A slight pause. A laceration requiring sutures. Nothing life-threatening. Where? His left arm. Emily stood very still. He's being treated where? She said. A private facility. He asked us to call rather than— Tell him to call me himself, Emily said. When he can. Tell him I need to hear his voice. A pause. I'll pass that along, Ms. Carter. She hung up. Sophie was looking at her from the table. Mama, Sophie said carefully. Is Adrian hurt? Emily turned to look at her daughter. She had forgotten in the moment that Sophie was right there. A little bit, she said. He's being taken care of. Sophie's expression was serious and calm, in the way of a child who had been around a nurse long enough to understand that being taken care of was a fact, and not a euphemism. Will he be okay? Yes, Emily said. Yes, he will. Sophie nodded, went back to her cereal. Then, without looking up, You should call him Mama. He'll call when he can. Okay, Sophie said, and then, But you should call anyway, so he knows. Emily looked at her daughter for a moment. So he knows. She picked up the phone. She called the number she had for him. It went to voicemail. She said, It's me. They told me you're fine and I believe them. But Sophie thinks you should know that we're thinking about you, and Sophie is usually right about these things. So. She paused. Take care of yourself. She hung up. She finished making Sophie's lunch. She dropped Sophie at school. She drove to the hospital for her shift, and she moved through the morning with the full attention focus she always brought to this work, and she was 3 hours into a complicated morning when her phone buzzed from her locker. She checked it on her break. A text from him. Heard your message. Thank you. 7 stitches. My own fault for moving too slowly. She typed back. Nurses would say that about every patient if we were allowed. His response. How's your shift? Tell me how you actually are first. A pause. I've been better. I've been worse. Right now I'm thinking about a restaurant that's been open for 30 years, and a woman who laughed in a way that surprised both of us. Emily sat in the break room at Northwestern Memorial and read that sentence 3 times. She typed, You need to rest. I know. And eat something. Vera is handling it. Good. She hesitated, then typed Adrian. The thing that happened last night. Is it going to keep happening? A longer pause. I don't know yet. Probably not. Caruso was making a point. I'll make one back. After that, the language usually gets quieter. The language. In my world, some conversations happen differently than in yours. She looked at that sentence, at everything it meant, and didn't say. Will the journalist piece make it worse? In the short term, yes. Long term, probably not. These things surface and then they settle. The people who need to know what's real already know. She typed, How is your arm sore? The doctor told me to keep it elevated, which is difficult when you have 18 things to manage. Elevate the arm, Adrian. Yes, ma'am. She almost smiled. I'll call you tonight. I'd like that. She put the phone away and went back to her shift and told herself very firmly that the tight, specific feeling in her chest when she'd heard the words, He's fine, he wants you to know that first, was information she would process later when she was not at work, when she had the time and the space to be honest about what it meant. She was a nurse. She processed things in order. Right now, there were patients. She called him at 9. He answered on the first ring again. His voice was lower than usual, the specific low of someone managing physical discomfort without advertising it. "How's the arm?" she said. "I already heard about elevating it. I'll tell you every time until you do it." "It's elevated," he said. "Currently, propped on 2 pillows. Thank you. It seems excessive. It's basic wound management." She pulled her knees up on the couch. "Talk to me. Tell me something that isn't about last night." A pause. "Like what?" "Anything. What are you thinking about?" He was quiet for a moment. A considering quiet. "I'm thinking about my father's apartment," he said. He had this apartment on the 7th floor of a building near Wacker Drive. He lived there for the last 15 years of his life. Never changed anything, same furniture, same curtains, same photograph on the desk that he never talked about. And when he died, I went in to clear it out, and I realized I didn't know what half the things in that apartment meant to him. I didn't know the stories." A pause. "I threw things away that probably had weight I didn't understand. And I've never quite let go of that. That I knew who he was in the way that mattered for the organization, but I didn't know him the way you know someone when you know what they keep on their desk and why." Emily listened. "What was in the photograph?" she said. "A woman I didn't recognize, young, standing in front of something, a building maybe. She was smiling in the way people smiled in old photographs, like the camera was still a little bit formal, a little bit of an occasion." "Did you ever find out who she was?" "No." He paused. "I think about that sometimes. That she existed in his life, enough to be on his desk for 15 years, and I never even knew she had a name. Are you telling me this because of last night?" "Maybe," he said. 7 stitches is enough to make a person think about what they know and don't know about the people in their life." She heard what was underneath that. "Ask me," she said. "Ask you whatever you want to know," she said. "You've been careful. You've been considerate. You don't push, which I appreciate. But you have things you want to ask me, and you've been filing them away. And tonight you have 7 stitches, and you're thinking about your father's desk." She shifted on the couch. "So ask." A pause. Then, "What do you tell Sophie about her father?" Emily breathed. "The truth," she said, "or a version of it appropriate to 6 years old. That her father and I weren't able to be together. That he loved her the way he knew how, which wasn't very well. That she has a whole family on her mother's side who loves her, and that love isn't smaller because it's only from one direction." "Does she ask about him?" "Sometimes. Less than she used to." She paused. "She stopped asking why he doesn't visit. I think she figured out the answer was not a good one and decided the question wasn't worth the answer." "That's a lot of wisdom for 6. "She's had to grow some early," Emily said. "I hate that. I hate that she's had to understand absence at 6. But she's made it into something strong instead of something broken, and I don't know how she did that. I think she was just born that way." "She was born to you," he said. Emily looked at the ceiling. "You can't say things like that," she said. "Why not?" "Because I'm trying to maintain a reasonable emotional pace here, and you keep—" She stopped. "Keep what?" "Saying the exact thing she said. You keep saying the exact thing." A quiet moment. "Is that bad?" he said. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "Ask me another one." "What do you want?" he said. "Not tonight, not specifically. What do you want for your life? You said at the wedding you didn't know. Has that changed?" She thought about it seriously. Not the performed humility of, "I just want what's best for Sophie." The real answer. "I want to finish what I started," she said. "I want to go back to school. There's a program, a nurse practitioner program, that I've been looking at for 2 years without letting myself actually look. I want to be more than I am right now. Not because I'm not enough, but because I have more in me and I've been waiting." For the right time, for the right money, for I don't know. Permission, maybe. Permission from who? That's the question, isn't it? She said. You don't need permission. I know that. Do you? She pressed her lips together. I'm working on it. Good, he said. Work faster. She almost laughed. You just had surgery. 7 stitches is not surgery. You were anesthetized. Locally. It barely counts. Adrian. Yes. Elevate the arm and go to sleep. A pause. Will you call me tomorrow? She thought about last Saturday, the bread, the laugh that had surprised them both, Gerald the fish, the painting with the wrong-colored jacket, 7 stitches and a text at 7 a.m. that started with, "He's fine. He wants you to know that first." Yes, she said. I'll call you tomorrow. Good night, Emily. Good night. She called him Friday. He called her Saturday. By the following week, this had become a thing. Not an acknowledged thing with a name or a definition, just a pattern that had established itself as naturally as the morning coffee and the nightlight and the Tuesday library days. Sophie had started leaving space for him. Not literally, but she would say things like, "Tell Adrian about the fish project at school," or "Ask Adrian if he knows what kind of tree Gerald lives in." She had folded him into the daily report she gave Emily every afternoon, with the same easy matter-of-factness she applied to everything she'd decided was simply part of the arrangement of things. Emily noticed. She let it happen. It was on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after the restaurant with the 30-year bread, that Adrian arrived at her door. Not called ahead. Not a Vera call or a text. He knocked. She opened the door in her scrubs with a coffee mug in her hand, and Sophie 6 feet behind her eating toast, and immediately said, "Adrian," with a volume appropriate to a sporting event. He looked different. The arm was healing. She could tell. The careful way he'd been holding it for the last week was gone. But there was something else different. Something in his face that she couldn't immediately name. "I should have called," he said. "Probably," she said. "I was nearby and I—" He stopped. Started again. This was becoming a pattern, him starting and stopping, which was so contrary to everything else about him that she had come to understand it as the signal that something was actually important. "There's been a development." Sophie appeared at Emily's elbow. "Hi." "Hi, Sophie. Is your arm better?" "Almost." "Does it itch?" "How did you know?" "Mama says stitches always itch when they're healing," Sophie said with great authority. "She says it means it's working." She looked at Emily. "Can he come in, Mama? It's cold." Emily looked at Adrian. He looked at her. She stepped back from the door. He came in. Sophie took him immediately toward the kitchen, explaining the progress of the school fish project and the question of Gerald's tree preferences. And Emily followed and put a second mug of coffee on the counter and waited. They sat at the kitchen table, all 3 of them, which was a thing that had apparently become normal without Emily formally deciding it. "Tell me the development," she said. Sophie looked between them with the assessment of a child who understood when adult things were happening and was deciding whether to pay attention or politely withdraw. "Fish project," Emily said to her. Sophie nodded wisely and took her toast and her rabbit and went to the living room. They could still hear her, but she had created the courtesy of distance. Adrian set his hands on the table. "Caruso has made an offer," he said. "What kind?" "The kind that would resolve the current tension." He paused. "He wants a partnership on a series of business interests on the south side. Legitimate interests, real estate, 2 commercial properties. The offer is structured to look cooperative. But the structure gives Caruso leverage over 3 territories I currently control independently," he said. "If I accept it, ends the immediate pressure. And it also, over the course of approximately 18 months, repositions him to take over operations I've spent 10 years building." Emily looked at him. "And if you refuse, then Caruso escalates. The journalist gets more material. There are probably more nights like the one last week." He looked at his hands. "The people around me face more risk. My organization becomes a pressure point for anyone who wants to use it. And Vincent Reyes, she said, is still talking to whoever will listen, Adrian said. Which gives Caruso the ammunition he needs to make this look like my organization is destabilizing regardless. Emily looked at the table. She thought, "You're not here to ask my advice," she said. "No," he agreed. "You're here because this affects me, and Sophie." "Yes." "How?" He met her eyes. "If I refuse Caruso, and this escalates the risk around you, increases in the short term. Not," he said it carefully, "not dramatically. I believe I can manage it. But I want you to have the information. I want you to be able to make decisions for yourself and Sophie with full knowledge." She looked at him. "You're asking me if I want you to step back," she said. "I'm asking what you want," he said, "with full information." The kitchen was quiet. From the living room, Sophie's voice was explaining something about habitats to her rabbit. Emily thought about the nursing program she'd been looking at for 2 years without letting herself look. About the word permission and who she'd been waiting to get it from. About a man who arrived at her door and said, "I want you to have full information," as though that was simply what you did with someone who mattered to you. "I'm not asking you to step back," she said. "Emily, I'm not," she said. "You came here to give me the choice. I've heard the information, and my answer is that I'm not asking you to step back." She paused. "But I am asking you to refuse Caruso." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because you told me 3 weeks ago that you've been making choices that ask too much of the people around you, and then defending those choices as necessary," she said. "And accepting Caruso's offer is exactly that. It's the expedient thing. The thing that makes the pressure stop immediately. And it will cost you everything you built, and it will cost you slowly in 18 months in ways you'll see coming and won't be able to stop." She looked at him steadily. "Refuse him. Fight it the right way. The slower way. And let me be someone you talk to while you're doing it, instead of someone you're protecting from the information." He stared at her. She had spoken more directly than she'd planned to. She didn't take it back. "You sound very certain," he said. "I'm a nurse," she said. "I've watched people make the easy choice and the right choice, and I know what the aftermath of each one looks like." She picked up her coffee mug. "Refuse Caruso." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Nobody talks to me like that." "I know," she said. "Maybe that's part of the problem." Something moved across his face. Not the almost smile, something deeper. "Part of the problem," he repeated. "Or part of the solution." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. From the living room, Sophie announced to no one in particular, "Gerald probably lives near a willow tree. They like water." Emily looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at Emily. "Stay for breakfast," she said. "If you don't have somewhere to be." He considered it for exactly 1 second. "I don't have somewhere to be," he said. She got up to make eggs. He moved to help without being asked. Found the plates, found the drawer with the silverware. Set the table with the uncomplicated ease of someone who had decided he was staying and was simply behaving accordingly. Emily stood at the stove and watched him from the corner of her eye. She thought about the door that had been slightly open since the wedding, the one she had been standing in front of for 3 weeks, thinking carefully, taking the full information in. She thought about what stay for breakfast meant, and what it didn't mean, and what it might mean eventually, and whether she was ready for any of it. She cracked the eggs into the pan. She decided she was not going to answer that question today. But she was done standing in the doorway. Whatever was on the other side of it, she was going through. And the strange, unexpected, stubborn truth of it was this: she was not afraid. She was paying attention. And for the first time in years, for the first time since she had looked at that empty chair beside her and thought, "I am so tired of sitting in rooms alone," Emily Carter was somewhere she had chosen to be on purpose, with full information for herself. Not performing fine, actually better than fine. and that she thought, as Sophie came barreling back into the kitchen with a new question about willow trees, was enough. For now, it was more than enough. He refused Caruso. The call happened on a Friday morning, and Adrian told Emily about it that evening. Not dramatically, not with the weight of a man announcing a decision. He wanted credit for just stated it the way he stated most things plainly, and without performance. He wasn't surprised, Adrian said. Caruso expected the refusal. I think he made the offer to see how long I'd consider it. How long did you? About 48 hours, he said, which is longer than I'd like. Emily was sitting at her kitchen table with the dinner dishes still in the sink, because Sophie had needed help with a school project that had turned into an hour-long collaboration involving construction paper and what appeared to be the entire contents of the craft drawer. Sophie was asleep now. The apartment was quiet in the specific way it got after Sophie went down a little emptier, a little stiller like the room itself exhaled. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Emily said. "I've been ready since I made the call," he said. "That part I know how to do." A pause. "It's everything else I'm less certain about." She knew he wasn't talking about Caruso. "Adrian." "Yes." "One thing at a time," she said. "I know." "Handle your business. I'll be here." "You keep saying that," he said. "I keep meaning it," she said. A quiet moment between them, the comfortable kind, the kind that didn't need filling. "Sophie left a drawing on the fridge today," Emily said. "Of a fish. She labeled it Gerald, and underneath she wrote, 'Don't worry, Gerald,' in very serious handwriting." He was quiet for a second. Then, "I want to see it." "I'll send a photo." "Emily." "Yes." "I want to see it in person," he said. "I want to come over and see it on the fridge where she put it." She looked at the refrigerator from where she sat. The drawing was there. Gerald looking worried as always, with the label in Sophie's careful 6-year-old printing. Next to it was a photograph of Emily and Sophie from last summer at the Navy Pier, and a permission slip for a school trip, and a magnet Sophie had picked out herself that said nurses do it with care, which Emily had not selected, but which had been gifted with such sincerity that she couldn't take it down. "Saturday morning," she said. "We have the park at 10, but you could come before." 8:30, he said. 8:30, she agreed. She heard him breathe, just once, like something settling. "Good night, Emily." "Good night." He arrived at 8:29. He had coffee. Not from her kitchen, from the place 3 blocks over that she had mentioned once in passing, was the only coffee worth getting within walking distance of her building. He had 2 cups and a small paper bag that turned out to contain the almond croissants Sophie had also mentioned once 2 weeks ago in the middle of a completely unrelated conversation. He had remembered. Sophie appeared in the kitchen in her pajamas with her rabbit and took one look at the croissants and said, "Yes," with the absolute conviction of someone whose morning had just been confirmed as good. Emily looked at Adrian over Sophie's head. He set the coffee on the counter with the ease of someone who had been in this kitchen more times than he actually had, and she noticed that the way he moved in the space now, not like a guest navigating unfamiliar territory, but like someone who had quietly learned where things were and stopped apologizing for knowing. "Gerald," he said, looking at the refrigerator. Sophie looked up from the croissant. "I made it so he wouldn't be lonely," she said. "The real Gerald has other fish, but I think he needs reminding." "That's very thoughtful," Adrian said. "The librarian said she might frame it," Sophie said. "If I make a better version, I think I can make his worried face more accurate." "I'd like to see the better version too," he said. Sophie considered him. "You can come to the library sometime, if you want. Gerald is there on Tuesdays." "Sophie," Emily said. "I'm being inclusive," Sophie said. "Mrs. Kim says inclusion is important." "Mrs. Kim is right," Adrian said. "I'll talk to your mama about Tuesdays." Sophie appeared to find this arrangement entirely satisfactory and returned to her croissant with the focus of someone who had settled a business matter and could now eat in peace. Emily picked up her coffee. It was exactly right. The place 3 blocks over the specific order she got every time remembered from one sentence in one conversation 3 weeks ago. She looked at him. He was watching Sophie eat, and his face had that look again, the one she had been filing away, the one she had been building a collection of. The unguarded one, the one that showed what was underneath the weight. She didn't say anything about it. She drank her coffee, and for a little while on a Saturday morning in her kitchen, everything was exactly what it was, and nothing more, and it was enough. The pressure from Caruso began the following Monday. It didn't arrive the way she'd half expected, dramatically visibly in ways that announced themselves. It arrived the way most real pressure did, which was quietly and from multiple directions at once. Adrian told her on Tuesday. Not everything. She had learned to read the difference between what he told her and what existed in the space around what he told her, and she had decided deliberately to let him manage that boundary. He was not withholding to protect himself. He was calibrating what she needed to know against what would only frighten her without helping either of them. She trusted that. Mostly. 2 of my business contacts have received calls suggesting they reconsider their relationships with my organization, he said. Standard Caruso apply pressure at the edges, see what holds. Are they reconsidering? 1 is nervous, 2 are solid. A pause. The journalist has a second piece coming. More specific this time. Names some financial implication, the kind of detail that federal interest follows. Is there federal interest? There has always been a degree of federal interest in my organization, he said evenly. This isn't new, but Reyes gave them a thread to pull, and they're pulling it. Emily was at work. Break room door closed. 10 minutes. Is any of it going to land on me? She said. No, he said. You're nowhere near my financials or operations. But, he stopped. Tell me. Your name appeared in a supplementary file the journalist received, he said. Not in the piece, but in the background research, as someone associated with me personally. The break room was very quiet. My name, she said. First and last. Your employer. Nothing about Sophie. He said it quickly, the nothing about Sophie, knowing that was the first place her mind would go. My attorney is working on the sourcing. We don't know yet who gave him the file. Someone who knows about me, she said. Yes. From your side or Caruso's? I don't know yet. She pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of her nose. Adrian. I know. My name is in a journalist's background file. Yes. I'm a nurse. I work in an emergency department. I have no connection to anything you do professionally. I went to a wedding and danced with you. I know, he said again. His voice was level, but there was something underneath it, a tightness she recognized, now the specific sound of a man holding himself accountable for something. Find out who gave him that file, she said. I will. Before the piece runs. I'm working on it. She breathed. I have to go back to work. I know, Emily. Don't apologize, she said. Not yet. Find out who it was and then we'll talk. She hung up. She sat for exactly 30 seconds. Then she went back to work. He found out on Thursday. She knew before he told her because he called at 6 in the morning, not his usual time, not their established pattern, and his voice when she answered had a quality she had not heard before. Not anger, something colder and more controlled than anger. Tell me, she said immediately. It was my cousin, he said. Emily went still. Marcus, he said. My father's brother's son. He's been in the organization since he was 22. I've known him for 15 years. She absorbed that. He sold information to Caruso, she said, who gave it to the journalist. Yes. Why? Money, he said. And resentment. He believed he should have taken over the organization when my father died instead of me. He's believed that for 10 years, and I knew he believed it, and I... He stopped. I kept him inside because I thought I could manage it, because loyalty to family is... He stopped again. Is what your world runs on, Emily finished. Yes. And he used that. Yes, she thought about what this meant. Not just for Adrian's organization, the journalist, the Federal Thread. What it meant for the man on the phone who had kept someone close for 10 years because loyalty to family was what his world ran on and had, that turned into a weapon against him. "Where is he now?" she said carefully. "Being handled," Adrian said. She recognized the word. She had learned what it meant and what it didn't mean in his world, and she trusted his earlier clarification. He had changed how he operated. She believed that. But she also understood that handled was a word that contained things she was choosing deliberately not to examine too closely. "My name in that file," she said. "Can it be contained? My attorney is in conversation with the journalist's editor. There's no public interest story in you. You're genuinely a peripheral figure with no organizational involvement. We're confident your name won't appear in print." He paused. "But the file exists. I can't make it not exist." "I know you can't." "Emily." "I'm not leaving," she said, a beat. "I haven't asked you to. I know. But you called at 6 in the morning with that voice, which means part of you is waiting for me to." She pulled her knees up on the bed. Sophie wouldn't be up for another 40 minutes. The apartment was still. "I'm not. But I need something from you." "Name it. Tell me what you're going to do about Marcus," she said. "Not the details. I don't need the details. But tell me what it means for the organization and for you personally. Tell me whether this breaks something that can't be fixed." He was quiet for a moment. "It's a wound," he said finally. "One I should have seen coming. He'll be removed from the organization. His access is already gone. The financial damage can be repaired." He paused. "Personally." Another pause. "Personally, it confirms something I've known for a while. That the model I inherited from my father relies too heavily on loyalty that can't be verified and power that can't be shared, and that—" He stopped. "Has to change," Emily said. "Yes." "Which means your organization changes." "Which means a lot of things change," he said quietly. "And some of them I should have changed 10 years ago. And some of them I haven't changed because change is slow in this world, and slow has kept me alive, and I—" He stopped for the third time. And she heard in the stopping what he wasn't saying, which was that he was tired. Not last night tired. Fundamentally, foundationally tired of the weight of carrying something that had never been built right to begin with. "Adrian," she said. "Yes. When is the last time someone asked you what you wanted? Not for the organization. For yourself." A silence. "A restaurant 3 weeks ago," he said. She almost smiled. "What do you want?" He didn't answer immediately. She let him not answer immediately. That was something she had learned. He needed the space to say the actual thing, rather than the organized version, and you had to wait for it. "I want to build something that doesn't require me to keep secrets from the people I care about," he said. I want mornings, the Saturday kind. I want to know what Gerald looks like in the better version Sophie is drawing. I want—" He stopped. Started again. "I want a life that I can explain to a 6-year-old without running out of honest answers." Emily sat with that for a moment. "That's a lot to want," she said. "I know." "It's also all reasonable," she said. "From where I'm standing, it doesn't feel reasonable. It feels like asking for something that exists in a different universe than the one I'm actually in. Then start building the bridge," she said. "One thing at a time. That's what I did. When Daniel left and Sophie was born, and I had nothing except what I could carry, I didn't think about 4 years from now. I thought about tomorrow. And then the next tomorrow." She looked at Sophie's closed door down the hall. "You refuse Caruso. You remove Marcus. You change what needs changing. And you do it one thing at a time, and you don't expect the whole shape of it to be clear before you start." He was quiet. "You make it sound manageable," he said. "I'm a nurse," she said. "Making difficult things feel manageable is the job." A pause. And then quietly, "I don't know what I did to deserve this conversation." You sat down at table 12, she said. You said that was your table. It was, she said, and you sat down anyway. The second journalist piece ran the following Tuesday. Emily read it at the nurse's station on her lunch break. Her name was not in it. Her name was not anywhere. Adrian's organization was named his business interests, outlined the federal interest implied in the careful language journalists used when they knew something they couldn't prove. Marcus's name appeared in connection with financial irregularities that were framed as organizational, not personal. The piece was thorough and damaging and did not mention Emily Carter. She texted Adrian Reed the piece. You're not named on anything criminal. The implication is there, but implication isn't evidence. He responded, My attorney says the same thing. Your attorney is right. How are you? A pause. Managing. She typed, That's the wrong answer. Another pause. Longer. Tired, he wrote, and angry at myself for not moving faster on Marcus, and aware that both of those things are my problem to solve and not yours. They're not my problem to solve, she typed back, but I'm allowed to care about them. Yes, he wrote, you are. She put the phone away. She went back to work. He came to dinner on Friday, not the restaurant with the 30-year bread. Her apartment. She made the pasta dish her mother had taught her before the years of careful criticisms had made every interaction with her mother something she had to prepare for, rather than something she simply had. It was a good dish. Sophie had requested it specifically because, as she explained seriously, it was the best pasta, and Adrian should have the best pasta. Sophie had somewhere in the last month decided that Adrian's meals at their apartment required specific curation. This was the second time she had made recipe recommendations. Emily was choosing to regard this as Sophie being hospitable rather than Sophie conducting a dedicated campaign with long-term goals, though she was fairly certain it was both. Adrian brought wine. He also brought, because he had apparently been paying attention to everything a children's book about ocean fish that he had somehow sourced, without any of them having discussed it, and which he gave to Sophie with the complete casualness of someone not making a big deal of a thing that was in fact a big deal. Sophie looked at the book. She looked at Adrian. She said, Is Gerald in here? Page 43. He said. Sophie flipped to page 43 with the urgency of someone confirming vital intelligence. She studied the page. She looked up. His real name is a Blenny, she said. It says Blennies always look worried because of their eyebrows. I thought you'd want to know, he said. Sophie held the book to her chest and looked at him with an expression that Emily recognized because she had seen it before. It was the expression Sophie used when something had moved her enough that she didn't have words for it yet. Thank you, Sophie said. She said it the way she had said it at the wedding when she first saw him through the car window, simple and direct and completely sincere. You're welcome, he said. Emily stood at the stove and looked at her pasta and told herself she was not going to get emotional about a children's book about fish. She was very nearly successful. After dinner, after Sophie was in bed with the book about Blennies and her rabbit and the nightlight making everything gold, Emily and Adrian sat on the couch with the wine she had not opened until this moment, because the evening had been a Sophie evening, and Sophie evenings required full attention. She's asleep, Emily said, listening for the particular quality of silence that meant Sophie had gone down genuinely. She went fast, he said. She was up at 5 this morning because she was thinking about Blennies, Emily said. She saved it. She'll call it research. He smiled. The real one. The one that changed his face. Emily looked at him. I need to tell you something, she said. He turned toward her slightly, listening. That full, absolute attention. I've been accepted to the nurse practitioner program, she said. He went still. When? He said. I applied 6 weeks ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't want... She paused. I didn't want to tell you and then not get in. I didn't want to need anything from you before I knew it was real. She looked at her wine glass. I got the acceptance letter Monday. I've been sitting with it for 4 days. Why are you just telling me now? He said. Because I needed to know I was telling you, she said. Not asking for permission. Not looking for someone to make the decision with me. Telling you. There's a difference. He looked at her for a long moment. There is, he agreed. I'm going to do it, she said. The program. I've already talked to my nursing director about schedule adjustments. I have a plan for childcare. I've done the math on the finances and it's tight, but it works. She paused. I'm telling you because you're someone in my life now, and I wanted you to know. He set his glass down on the coffee table. He turned toward her and said, Tell me about the program. So she did. She told him about the curriculum and the clinical hours and what it would mean to be a nurse practitioner and why she had wanted to go back to school since before Sophie was born, and what it had felt like to finally send the application and then wait in the terrible suspended way of waiting for something you have wanted for so long that the wanting itself has become a kind of grief. She told him all of it, and he listened, the way he always listened, completely missing nothing, not interrupting, except to ask one precise question at exactly the right moment. At the end of it, she said, I know the timing isn't ideal. Timing is never ideal, he said. You've been waiting for ideal timing for 2 years. You said so. I know. Don't wait anymore. I'm not, she said. I enrolled Monday afternoon. She looked at him. Right after I got the letter. He looked at her. And the thing in his face was the same thing it had been when Sophie had taken his hand on the sidewalk, the fractional second of being caught entirely off guard by something unexpectedly good. You enrolled before you told me, he said. I told you. Telling you and needing your input aren't the same thing. He shook his head slightly, not in disagreement, in something that looked like amazement. You are the most... He stopped. What independently formidable person I have ever met, he said. Emily blinked. That's not... It's a compliment. It sounds like a description of a building. It's the highest compliment I know how to give, he said. You decided what you wanted, and you did it before you told anyone, because you needed to know it was your decision completely, and then you told me, and made it clear you weren't asking for anything except to have me know. He paused. Do you understand how rare that is? She looked at him. In my world, he said, people tell you things because they want something from you, or they wait to tell you things because they're afraid of your reaction. Or they perform vulnerability because they've learned it gets results. He paused. You told me because I'm someone in your life and you wanted me to know. It's everything, Emily. The room was quiet. She looked at the wine glass in her hands. Don't make it larger than it is, she said softly. I'm not. His voice was even quieter. I'm making it exactly what it is. She breathed. Adrian? Yes. What are we doing? She said. He was quiet for a moment. Something real, he said. Define real. I think about you when you're not here, he said. I think about Sophie. I adjust decisions based on what they mean for the two of you. I came to your apartment on a Thursday without calling ahead because I needed to tell you something in person, and I realized I'd started thinking of this as the place I needed to be when things mattered. He paused. That's real. She looked at him. I've been here before, she said. Feeling something that felt real and finding out it wasn't. I know. I have Sophie, she said. I can't whatever I do it goes through that. Through what it costs her, what it gives her, what it means for her. I know that too. Do you? She said. Not challenging. Genuinely asking. He looked at her steadily. I brought a 6-year-old a book with the specific page number where her fish appears. I remembered the croissants from one sentence 3 weeks ago. I learned where the silverware drawer is, and I stop at the right place when Sophie is explaining something because she needs to finish the thought. He paused. I know she is the first and most important thing. I'm not asking to come before that. I would never... He stopped. Emily, I would never. She looked at him. She believed him. That was the thing she kept coming back to. She believed him. Not because she was naive, and not because she needed to. Because she had been paying attention carefully and seriously for 6 weeks now, and everything he had done had matched everything he had said, and that was rarer than anything. "Okay," she said. "Okay what?" "Okay, something real," she said. "We're doing something real." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached over and took her hand. Not dramatically, not in the way of a man making a declaration. Simply reached over and took her hand, the way you held on to something you were choosing to hold. She let him. She held back. And they sat like that for a while, in her quiet apartment with Sophie asleep down the hall, and the wine half finished, and the fish book on the kitchen table, and it was not a dramatic moment. It was not a moment that would make anyone's heart race to describe. It was better than that. It was ordinary. It was chosen. The ordinariness lasted 11 days. She would count them later. 11 days of the pattern settling further calls and texts, and Saturday mornings, and 2 Tuesdays when he came to the library, because Sophie had made the invitation and Emily had not rescinded it, and Gerald the Blenny had apparently recognized him as a recurring presence, and had become marginally less worried in his general expression according to Sophie, though Emily had her doubts about this analysis. 11 days, and then her Aunt Patricia called on a Wednesday morning. "I need you to come to your mother's house," Patricia said. Emily was driving Sophie to school. She put it on speaker. "What happened?" she said. "Nothing happened. I need to talk to you. Your mother and I both do." "Patricia, it's about Adrian Moretti." A pause. "We know you're involved with him. The whole family knows. And there are things you need to hear before this goes further." Emily looked at the road. "We'll talk about this when Sophie isn't in the car," she said. "Of course," Patricia said. She hung up. Sophie was looking at her from the passenger seat. "Was that Aunt Patricia?" Sophie said. "Yes." "She sounds like she has a lot of opinions," Sophie said. "She does," Emily agreed. "Are you going to listen to them?" Emily pulled up in front of the school. "I'm going to hear them," she said. "That's not the same thing." Sophie looked at her with those dark, assessing eyes. "Okay, Mama," she said, satisfied. She unbuckled, grabbed her bag, leaned over, and kissed Emily's cheek. "Don't let them make you feel small," she said, and got out of the car. Emily sat in the drop-off lane long enough for the car behind her to tap the horn gently, and then she pulled out and drove. Don't let them make you feel small. 6 years old. Her mother's house was the house Emily had grown up in. Same kitchen table. Same particular light in the afternoon. Same chair where her mother sat when she wanted to have a serious conversation, the one near the window positioned slightly higher than the others, because her mother had never been above managing the physical geography of a difficult discussion. Patricia was already there when Emily arrived. Her cousin Melissa, too, which Emily had not expected, and which added a specific character to the room, Melissa who had the diamond earrings, and the move to Naperville, and who had said, "You look tired," and later "You did well at the wedding," and who occupied a particular uncertain position in Emily's internal accounting of who her family actually was. Her mother Carol Carter stood when Emily came in. Carol Carter was 61 years old and had raised Emily largely alone after Emily's father left when Emily was 14 and had transferred to Emily through a combination of love and unexamined pain. A set of beliefs about what women were allowed to want and how much of their wanting they were allowed to show. She was not a cruel woman. She was a frightened one. Emily had spent the last several years trying to learn the difference. "Sit down," her mother said. Emily sat. "We know about Adrian Moretti," her mother began. "I know you know," Emily said. "I haven't hidden it." "We've done some research," Patricia said. Emily looked at her. "What kind?" "His organization has been in the papers," Patricia said. "Federal Interest Criminal Associations, a journalist investigating." "I know about the journalist," Emily said. "You know," her mother said. "Yes." "And you're still—" "Yes." Emily said. Carol Carter set her hands flat on the table. Emily, this man is dangerous. He's not dangerous to me. You don't know that. I do, actually, Emily said. I've spent 6 weeks paying very careful attention to exactly that question. I've asked hard questions, and I've gotten honest answers, and I've made decisions with full information. That's more than I can say for some other choices I've made. She paused. This isn't Daniel. I want you to understand that. He's worse than Daniel, her mother said. Daniel abandoned his child, Emily said. Quietly. Evenly. Whatever Adrian is, he has never once done anything that hurt Sophie. He has done the opposite. For now, Patricia said. And I will evaluate for now with the information I have now, Emily said. I'm not going to make decisions about my life based on things that haven't happened. Melissa had been quiet. She spoke now. We're scared for you, she said, not Patricia's controlled concern, something more genuine. We're not saying you're wrong. We're saying we're scared. That's different. Emily looked at her. I know, she said. I know you are, and I understand why. She looked around the table at her mother, at Patricia, at Melissa. But I need you to hear something. I made my daughter a promise when she was born. I made it to myself that I was done making decisions because I was afraid of what people would think. I was done making myself smaller because it was easier. I have been doing this alone for 4 years, and I have built a good life, and I am going back to school, and I am making decisions for myself with real information. She paused. And one of those decisions is Adrian, and I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. Her mother looked at her. Carol Carter had a particular expression she used when she was in the process of revising something she believed, and it looked like discomfort wearing the mask of composure, and Emily had been watching for it her entire life. It was there now. If something happens to Sophie, her mother started. Nothing is going to happen to Sophie, Emily said. You can't know. Mother? Emily looked at her directly. I have done nothing but protect Sophie for 6 years. Every decision I have made has had Sophie in the center of it. That has not changed. That will never change. She kept her voice level. Trust me, not him. Me. Trust that I know my own child and my own life. The kitchen was quiet. Then her mother looked at the table. He's the one who had someone outside your building, Carol said. After the wedding. Yes. And the man who called you. Emily stopped. Who told you about that? A pause. Melissa saw something on your phone, Patricia said. When you were here for your mother's birthday last month. She didn't mean to, it was just... Emily turned to Melissa. Melissa's expression confirmed it. You read my messages, Emily said. I glanced. You read my messages, Emily said again, and told Patricia and my mother. She breathed. That's why you called. Not because of the journalist piece. Because you read something on my phone. The silence was different now. We were worried, Melissa said. So you went around me, Emily said, instead of asking me. She looked at the table. You could have called me. You could have said, Emily, I accidentally saw something. Can we talk? You didn't. You took information that wasn't yours and used it to build a case behind my back. We thought, I know what you thought, Emily said. You thought I needed to be managed, that I couldn't be trusted with my own life without intervention. She looked at her mother. That's the same thing you've always thought, that I make poor decisions, that I need correction, that I... She stopped, breathed. I don't. I haven't. And I need you to see that. Carol Carter was very still. I've been hard on you, her mother said. Yes, Emily said. You have. I was afraid, her mother said. After Daniel. After I was afraid and I took it out on you, and I know that wasn't fair. This was not something Carol Carter said easily. Emily could hear how much effort it was taking. She let it land. She didn't rush past it. I know, Emily said finally. I know you were. I'm still afraid, her mother said. I know that too. Emily looked at her. But I need you to be afraid and still trust me. Those two things can exist at the same time. I know because I do it every day. Her mother looked at her daughter. Something moved across her face. Something that had to do with seeing clearly the woman her daughter had become and calculating the distance between what she had expected and what was actually there. Tell me about him, her mother said. Not what the papers say. Tell me yourself. Emily looked at her. She had not expected that. She took a breath, and she told them. She told them about Table 12 and the 1 hour that ran long and the card delivered to the nurse's station and the coffee for Marco and Sophie taking his hand without asking. She told them about the honest conversation at 6 in the morning and the restaurant that had been open for 30 years and the children's book with the page number. She told them about Marcus and what Adrian had done and what he was trying to become and the Saturday mornings and Gerald the Blenny and the nurse practitioner program that she had enrolled in before she told anyone because she needed it to be her decision. She told them all of it, and when she was done the kitchen was quiet. Her mother looked at her hands. You seem... She paused. You seem like yourself again, she said finally. The version of you before everything got hard. Emily looked at her. I'm better than that version, she said. That version hadn't been through anything yet. She was in her car in her mother's driveway, about to leave when her phone rang. Adrian. She answered immediately. Something in her chest knew before he spoke that this was not the regular call. Emily. His voice was wrong. Not panicked, he didn't panic, but stripped of the usual steadiness, like something had removed the layer underneath the composure. What happened? She said. Sophie's school called your number and you didn't pick up, he said. They had me as an emergency contact. Emily's blood went cold. What? She said. She's fine, he said immediately. She is fine. She fell on the playground, hit her head. The school nurse says she's alert and talking and there's no loss of consciousness, but they want her evaluated. He paused. I'm already at the school. I got there 5 minutes ago. Emily was already starting the car. I'm coming, she said. I know. Emily, she's okay. She asked for you and she asked if Gerald was going to be worried about her. Emily's hands on the steering wheel were shaking. She had not listed Adrian as an emergency contact. She had listed her neighbor, Patricia, her nursing director. I didn't put you as a contact, she said. A silence. No, he said. You didn't. Then how? Because I called the school 3 weeks ago, he said. After the Reyes situation. And I asked to be added. I should have told you. His voice was very careful. I should have told you, and I didn't, and I understand if that... Are you with her right now? Emily said. Yes, she's sitting in the nurse's office with an ice pack and the Blenny book. She brought it in her school bag. Emily closed her eyes for 1 second. Tell her I'm 10 minutes away, she said. Okay. And Adrian, yes. We are going to talk about the contact list, she said. After I see her and she's been evaluated and I know she's okay. I know, he said, but... She pulled out of the driveway. Thank you for being there. A pause. Where else would I be? He said. She drove. Sophie was fine. She had a small contusion at her hairline. Emily evaluated it with the objective eye of a nurse, confirmed it was superficial, watched Sophie's pupils, track her fingers correctly, and answered all the standard orientation questions with the slight exasperation of a child who felt the questions were unnecessary. I know what year it is, Sophie said. Tell me anyway, Emily said. Sophie told her. And the day of the week. And the name of the current president. She answered every question with the meticulous compliance of someone who understood the point, but found the method slightly beneath her. She's fine, Emily said to the school nurse. I told them I was fine. Sophie confirmed. Adrian was standing near the door. He had been there when Emily arrived, and he had stepped back completely and immediately without being asked to give Emily the space to be Sophie's mother, without any navigating of his presence. He had not tried to insert himself into the evaluation. He had simply been there, and then moved back. When Sophie was cleared and Emily had signed the forms and they were gathering Sophie's things, Sophie looked at Adrian from across the room. "You came?" she said. "Yes," he said. "Before Mama," she said. Not accusatory, observational. "Your Mama was further away," he said. Sophie thought about this. "Okay," she said. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Sophie looked at Emily. "Can we all go home?" she said. "I want to show Adrian the new Gerald drawing." Emily looked at Sophie. She looked at Adrian. She thought about emergency contact lists and decisions made without her knowledge and what it meant that her first thought, her absolute first instinct when she'd heard Sophie was hurt, had been relief that he was already there. She thought about what that meant. She looked at her daughter with the ice pack and the Blenny book and the direct dark eyes that always saw too much. "Yes," Emily said. "We'll all go home." And they did. Later, after Sophie had shown the better Gerald drawing and eaten soup because Emily insisted and fallen asleep on the couch during what was supposed to be a short rest but became a genuine 2-hour nap. Emily and Adrian sat at the kitchen table. She looked at him. "The contact list," she said. "Yes," he said. "You added yourself without telling me." "Yes." "That's something I needed to decide," she said. "I know. You're right." He met her eyes. "I told you I'd give you full information and I didn't. I made a decision about your daughter without asking you. That broke the first ground rule." She looked at him. He didn't deflect. He didn't explain it into justification. He said it plainly. "You're right. I broke the rule the way he had that first night when he'd apologized through text. Accountability without performance." "Why did you do it?" she said. "Because after Reyes, I was afraid," he said. "Not for the organization, for her. And I acted on that fear without thinking about whether it was my decision to act on." "It wasn't," she said. "No," he agreed. "It wasn't." She looked at the table. "Sophie's face when she saw you there," Emily said quietly. "Before she saw me." He said nothing, waiting. "She wasn't surprised," Emily said. "That's what got me. She saw you, and she wasn't surprised. She said you came, not why are you here. She expected you." She looked up. "When did that happen?" He held her gaze. "I don't know exactly. It happened gradually." "I know," she said. "I watched it happen and I let it because—" She stopped. Because she was right," Emily said simply. "Her instinct about you was right from the beginning, and I trust her instincts." She paused. "I also need you to talk to me. When you make decisions that involve her, I need to be part of that." "You will be," he said. "From now on, I promise." She looked at him for a long moment. "I know you mean that," she said. "I do." She breathed. "Adrian." She looked at her hands. "I love her more than anything in the world. More than the program, more than whatever this is between us, more than any version of a future I can imagine for myself." She looked up. "So whatever we're doing, whatever this is becoming, it has to be something I can put her inside of and know she's safe. Not just physically, emotionally. She can't love someone and then lose them. She's already—" Her voice caught slightly. She controlled it. "She's already had that. With Daniel. She has never said it, but I know she carries it. And I will not let that happen to her again." He looked at her. His face was open in a way she had only seen a handful of times completely without the layers he wore in the world, in the organization, in his uncle's conversations, and his attorney's meetings, and his rival's pressures. Just the face beneath everything. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "You don't know that for certain," she said. "The world you're in?" "I'm not going anywhere," he said again. "That is a decision I have made. Whatever the world does, I've made it. She looked at him. She thought about the word she had found, and filed away, and not used yet. The one that had started forming on a sidewalk, when Sophie took his hand, that had grown through restaurant bread and coffee orders, and children's books, and emergency contacts, and a man sitting in a school nurse's office with an ice pack and a Blenny book while her daughter waited. She thought about it. She let herself think it. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Down the hall, Sophie stirred on the couch. The sound of her settling back into sleep, the small, unconscious sound of a child who was safe and knew it. They both went quiet and listened until she settled. Then they looked at each other in the kitchen that had always been Emily's alone at the table where she had sat in the dark after the wedding, and wondered what the answer might be under the refrigerator magnet that said, "Nurses do it with care," and next to the drawing of Gerald and his willow tree. They sat there, together. And for now, for this particular moment, in this particular kitchen, the complicated world outside held its breath. And it was enough. 3 months after a man sat down at table 12 without asking. Emily Carter started her first week of the nurse practitioner program. She did not tell anyone except Adrian, Sophie, and Donna. Donna had said, "Finally, I've been waiting 2 years for you to stop talking yourself out of this." Sophie had said, "Does this mean you'll know even more things?" Adrian had said nothing for a moment, and then, "Tell me what you need, and I'll make sure you have it." She had told him she didn't need anything. He had nodded, and then without further discussion, he had quietly adjusted his schedule so that on the 2 evenings per week she had class, he was available, not announced, not negotiated, simply done the way he did things that mattered without making her ask for them. She noticed. She let it mean what it meant. The program was harder than she'd expected, and exactly as right as she'd known it would be. She came home on the first Thursday with her head full and her eyes tired, and sat at the kitchen table with her notes while Sophie did homework beside her, both of them quiet, in the companionable way they had developed over 6 years of being two people who worked well in the same room. Adrian called at 9. "How was it?" he said. "Overwhelming," she said. "Perfect. I kept thinking I didn't belong there. And then the professor said something about diagnostic reasoning, and I knew I belonged there." "You've always belonged there," he said. "I know that now," she said. "I'm catching up." He was quiet for a moment. "I have something to tell you." She straightened slightly. She had learned his tones. This one carried weight. "Tell me," she said. "I had a meeting with my attorney and 2 federal contacts this morning," he said. "A preliminary conversation about a formal agreement, cooperation on specific historical matters in exchange for restructuring protections." She absorbed that. "You're cooperating," she said. "I'm beginning a process that may lead to cooperation," he said carefully. It's not simple. It's not fast. But it's the first real step toward building something that doesn't require me to keep information from people I care about." A pause. "You told me to refuse Caruso. You told me to change what needed changing one thing at a time. This is the next thing." "Does your organization know?" she said. "My inner circle does. 2 of them are relieved. 1 resigned this morning." He paused. "I expected more pushback. I think people were more tired of the weight of it than they admitted." "People usually are," she said. "You're not surprised," he said. "I'm a nurse," she said. "I've watched people make themselves sick, holding on to things they should have let go years ago. The relief when they finally do is always bigger than they expected." He was quiet. "Emily," he said. "Yes, this is going to be a long process. The next year is going to be complicated. There will be things I can't tell you in detail and decisions I have to make that aren't clean, and moments when this world asks things of me that I'd rather it didn't." "I know," she said. "I need you to know that going in. Not the version where I tell you it will be fine. The real version." She looked at Sophie's bent head across the table pencil, moving carefully over a worksheet about fractions. "I know the real version, Adrian," she said. "I've been watching the real version for 3 months. I'm not going anywhere either. The silence between them was the comfortable kind. Good night, he said. Good night, she said. Elevate something if anything hurts. Nothing hurts. I'll verify that Saturday. She could hear him almost smile. Saturday, he confirmed. Nish. Saturday became the word for a specific kind of morning. Not every Saturday their lives were not a schedule that ran without variation, but enough Saturdays that Sophie had begun to associate the word with a particular arrangement of things. Adrian at the door at 8:29, coffee from the place 3 blocks over, croissants, when Sophie had not already had them recently enough to make requesting them seem greedy, and the loose, unhurried shape of a morning that had nowhere it urgently needed to be. Sophie had updated the Gerald drawing 3 times. The third version had been approved by the school librarian as frameable, and had been framed actually, and now hung in the living room beside the permission slip magnet and a photograph Sophie had insisted on taking of the 3 of them at the kitchen table that had come out slightly sideways, but which Sophie declared perfect. Emily looked at that photograph sometimes when she was alone in the kitchen. 3 people at a table, slightly sideways, Sophie in the middle with a croissant and her rabbit, Adrian with his coffee. Emily caught mid-laugh at something that had already passed out of memory, but whose effect was still visible in her face. She looked like someone who was exactly where she chose to be. She kept the photograph where it was. The first major crisis of the new year arrived in February. Not from Caruso, whose pressure had quieted significantly after Adrian's preliminary cooperation conversation became known in the right circles. Not from the journalist whose second piece had generated attention, but not legal consequence. Not from Marcus, who had disappeared from Chicago with the efficiency of someone who understood that disappearing was the most favorable option remaining to him. It came from Adrian's uncle. His name was Robert Moretti, and he was 68 years old, and he had been in Adrian's life since birth, and he had called Emily's phone directly on a Tuesday morning without warning. She almost didn't answer. Unknown number. But something made her. "Ms. Carter," he said. His voice was old Chicago, the particular cadence of a man who had grown up in a world where words were chosen carefully because they were frequently the most dangerous thing in any room. "My name is Robert Moretti. I believe you know who I am." "I do," she said. "I'd like to meet with you," he said. "Without Adrian. I want to be direct about that." Emily was at the hospital, break room, door closed. "Why without Adrian?" she said. "Because what I want to say to you is between us," he said. "I'm not interested in ambushing you. I'm not representing Caruso or any rival interest. I'm an old man who loves his nephew and has watched him change in the last 3 months in ways I've been waiting 15 years to see, and I would like to speak to the person responsible." She thought about this. "Tomorrow morning," she said. 10 a.m., the restaurant on Wacker, the Italian one that's been there 30 years, public place. I picked the location. A pause. She could hear his surprise at the terms. "Agreed," he said. She hung up. She called Adrian immediately. "Your uncle called me," she said. Silence. Then, "How?" "He has my number." A longer silence. "Emily, I didn't give him." "I know," she said. I'm not angry. I'm telling you because ground rule 1. I agreed to meet him tomorrow. I wanted you to know." "You agreed to meet him?" "Yes, without you." "Emily." "He asked to speak to me alone, and I want to hear what he has to say," she said. "I'll tell you everything after. But I want to hear it without you in the room because I want to know what he says to me when you're not there." A beat. "You're not afraid of him," Adrian said. It wasn't quite a question. "Should I be?" "No," he said. He's complicated, but he's not dangerous to you." "I know," she said. "I could hear it." "You could hear it from a 3-minute phone call." "I could hear it from the way he said, 'I love my nephew,'" she said. "Men who mean harm don't lead with that. They bury it." Adrian was quiet. "You're going to be fine," he said finally. "I know I am," she said. "I'll call you after." Robert Moretti was shorter than she'd expected. She didn't know why she'd expected tall, perhaps because Adrian's physical presence was significant, and she'd built the family around that. But Robert was average height and slightly heavy, and wore a gray coat that had seen years of Chicago winters and had the face of a man who had outlived several versions of his own life. He stood when she arrived. She noted that. They ordered coffee. He studied her with the frank assessment of a man who had spent decades evaluating people and no longer bothered to be subtle about it. She let him look. She'd sat across from more difficult audiences. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" "Someone softer," he said. "Someone easier to manage." "I imagine that's a disappointment," she said pleasantly. His expression shifted. Something approving moved through it. "It's the opposite," he said. "It's the first genuine relief I've felt about my nephew in years." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Say what you came to say." "Adrian is changing his organization," Robert said. "You know this." "I know some of it. The cooperation process, the restructuring, He paused, distance he's been building from certain aspects of the business. He looked at her. "This is going to make him enemies he doesn't currently have. People who benefited from the old structure will not accept the new one quietly." "I understand that. There will be pressure on him," Robert said. "Real pressure. More than Caruso. More than Marcus." He paused. "And there will be people who look at the reason for the change and decide that removing the reason is easier than accepting the change." Emily looked at him steadily. "You're warning me," she said. "I'm informing you," he said. "There's a difference. Adrian." He stopped, looked at his coffee. "My nephew has been carrying this organization since he was 24 years old. He has sacrificed things I didn't understand the value of until too late. He became someone that this world required him to be, and he was good at it, and he was also—" He stopped again. "He was disappearing, very slowly. The way people disappear when the role they're performing takes up more space than the person performing it." Emily did not move. "In 3 months," Robert said, "he has become the person I remember from before he took over. More careful, more honest, more—" The old man's voice changed, just slightly. "More present. He is present in a way he has not been in years." He looked at her directly. "I don't know you," he said. "I know what I've observed and what I've heard and what I see in him. I am not a man who gives credit easily, and I am giving you the credit for this." Emily looked at him. "It's not credit I should take," she said. "What he's doing, the cooperation, the restructuring, that's him. That's a decision he made. A decision he made because someone asked him what he wanted for himself," Robert said. "Not for the organization, for himself. I have known this man for 34 years, and I have never once asked him that question." He paused. "You asked it at a wedding 3 months ago." Emily looked at the table. "I came to warn you," Robert said, "and to ask you something." "Ask. Don't leave," he said simply. "Whatever comes next, and I cannot tell you exactly what will come, but it will be harder before it gets easier. Do not leave. He is building something real, and it requires someone real beside him, and you are—" He stopped himself, and she understood from the stopping that he was a man who was not accustomed to saying things like this, and was finding it more difficult than expected. "You are the first real thing he has chosen for himself in 15 years, and I am an old man asking you to stay." Emily looked at Robert Moretti across a table in the restaurant that had been open 30 years. She thought about a wedding, and table 12, and 1 hour that ran long. She thought about Sophie's hand reaching up without asking, and Blenny fish, and a photograph slightly sideways on a kitchen wall, and a man who remembered croissant orders from 3 weeks ago, and found the right page number, and put her silverware drawer in his permanent memory like it belonged there. She thought about what she had decided in her own kitchen, sitting in the dark after the wedding, when she had let herself wonder for the first time in years what the answer might be. She knew the answer now. "I'm not leaving," she said. Robert Moretti looked at her. The weight in his face shifted. just slightly, like a man who had been carrying something and had been unexpectedly allowed to set it down. "Good," he said. She nodded. They finished their coffee. She called Adrian from the parking lot. "He warned me," she said. "Harder before it gets easier." "I know," Adrian said. "Emily, he loves you," she said. "In the way that old men who don't know how to say it directly show it. He came to ask me to stay." A long silence. "What did you tell him?" Adrian said. "I told him I'm not leaving," she said. "Same thing I told you." Another silence. Longer. "Come over tonight," he said. "Both of you. I'll cook." She stopped walking. "You cook." "I cook," he said. "This is information I should have offered earlier." "Sophie is going to lose her mind," Emily said. "I'm counting on it," he said. "Oh, and he cooked pasta. Not her mother's recipe, his grandmother's, he said, which prompted Sophie to ask 47 questions about his grandmother in rapid succession, which he answered with a patience and a specificity that told Emily he had thought about this woman often and had been waiting without knowing it for someone to ask. His grandmother had come from Naples. She had been fierce and small, and had made pasta every Sunday for 40 years, and had called everyone she loved tesoro, and had been the one person in Adrian's childhood who had made the world feel like it had rules that were not arbitrary. "Did she know about the organization?" Sophie asked mid-pasta. "Sophie," Emily said. "It's a reasonable question," Sophie said. "She knew," Adrian said. "She didn't approve. She made her opinion clear every Sunday for as long as she was alive." He paused. "She also kept making the pasta. She said you didn't stop feeding people just because you disagreed with their choices." Sophie considered this with great seriousness. "That's good," she decided. "Withholding food as punishment is not productive. We talked about this at school." Emily looked at her plate. Adrian looked at Emily. "She's going to be a senator," he said. "Or a judge," Emily said. "She likes rules." "I like fair rules," Sophie corrected. "Unfair rules should be changed." Adrian nodded gravely. "I agree completely." "Good," Sophie said, and ate more pasta. The harder part arrived in March. Robert had been right. The people who had benefited from the old structure did not accept the new one quietly. There were 2 weeks in March that Emily experienced from a distance through the careful information Adrian gave her and the spaces around it that she had learned to read, during which the pressure on his organization was more acute than anything that had come before. She did not see him for 9 days. He texted. He called when he could. Twice the calls came after midnight, and she answered them anyway and talked to him the way she would have talked to a colleague on a very long, difficult shift, practically calmly about anything except what was actually happening. Because sometimes what people needed in the middle of something hard was a conversation that existed outside of it. On the 9th day, he arrived at her door at 7 in the morning. She opened the door in her robe with coffee already made, because she had heard his car in the street 20 minutes earlier, and she knew his car. He looked like someone who had been through 9 days without adequate sleep, and had managed it with discipline rather than comfort, which she recognized as a medical concern as much as anything else. She stepped back. He came in. She handed him coffee. He sat down at the kitchen table and drank it, and didn't say anything for a while, and she sat across from him, and didn't require him to. "It's stabilizing," he said finally. "I know," she said. "I could tell from the texts." He looked at her. "From the texts?" "You started using complete sentences again yesterday," she said. "When it's acute, you abbreviate. When it's stabilizing, you punctuate." He stared at her. "You noticed that," he said. "I notice things," she said. "Occupational hazard." He set down the coffee cup. "I missed this," he said. "All of it. You, Sophie, this table, this coffee, this—" He stopped. I missed this specific thing." "I know," she said. "We missed you too." Sophie appeared in the hallway. She looked at Adrian. She looked at Emily. She walked directly to Adrian, climbed into the chair beside him without invitation, and leaned against his arm, the way she sometimes leaned against Emily when she was tired and needed the proximity of someone she trusted. Adrian went very still, the same fractional second as the first time, and then he held on the same way. Sophie closed her eyes. "You're back," she said with the simple satisfaction of a statement of fact. "I'm back," he said. "Good," she said. "Gerald has been worried." Emily looked at both of them at her kitchen table. The word she had been filing away since October, the word she had found and held carefully and not said, arrived now with the complete certainty of something that had always been true and was simply now undeniable. She looked at Adrian. He looked at her over Sophie's head. She said, "I love you." Not performed, not managed, not timed, just true. His face did what she had never seen it do, not the almost smile, not the real smile, not the unguarded look she had been collecting. Something she had no prior category for. Something that was the face of a man receiving for the first time in a very long time. Something he had not known how to ask for. "Emily," he said. "You don't have to," she started. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since you sat across from me in a restaurant and told me you grieved the road and refused to apologize for it." He paused. "I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I had the right to it. I kept—" He stopped. Started again. "I kept waiting for you to see clearly enough to leave." "I see clearly," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why this—" He stopped. He looked at Sophie asleep against his arm. He looked at Emily. "This is everything," he said. "This table, this morning, this is everything I wanted and didn't know I was allowed to want." Sophie, apparently not actually asleep, but conducting surveillance with her eyes closed, said without moving, "I knew this already." Emily looked at her daughter. "You knew what?" she said. "That you love each other?" Sophie said. "I knew in October, at the library when Gerald wasn't worried anymore." She opened one eye. "I didn't say anything because you needed to figure it out yourselves." Adrian made a sound Emily had never heard from him before, low and genuine and slightly undone. "Sophie," Emily said. "I was being patient," Sophie said. "Mrs. Kim says patience is a virtue." "Mrs. Kim is exhaustingly correct," Emily said. Sophie smiled with her eyes still closed. April. The cooperation process moved into a formal phase. Adrian's attorney met with federal contacts 3 times in 2 weeks. The terms were long and complex and would take another year to fully resolve. The journalist published a 3rd piece that was for the first time not entirely hostile, a portrait of an organization in deliberate transition framed around sources who spoke anonymously about change. 2 of those sources Emily suspected had spoken because they were tired in the way Robert had described, tired of the weight of it. She didn't ask Adrian directly. He told her anyway. "2 of my people talked to the journalist," he said. "I knew before it ran. I let it happen." She looked at him. "You let your own organization speak publicly about restructuring. Controlled transparency," he said. "My attorney's phrase. The narrative exists whether I manage it or not. Better to shape the shape of it." "That's very calculated." "I'm a calculated person," he said. "That hasn't changed. What's changed is what I'm calculating toward." She thought about that. "What are you calculating toward?" He looked at her steadily. "Something I can explain to a 6-year-old without running out of honest answers." She had heard him say that before. The first time it had been a wish. Now it sounded like a report on progress. May arrived warm. Sophie finished her 1st grade year with a school performance in which she played at her own insistence the narrator, because as she explained to Emily, the narrator knows the whole story, and she liked knowing the whole story. She delivered her lines with the authority of a person who had been practicing public address since she could walk, and when it was over, she found Emily and Adrian in the audience. They were sitting next to each other. Emily noted, and had been for the entire 45 minutes, without either of them having to manage the geometry of it, and she walked directly to them and held both their hands and said, "Did I do it right?" With the specific vulnerability of someone whose confidence was real, but whose need for confirmation was also real. "You were perfect," Emily said. "You were the best part," Adrian said. Sophie looked between them. "You're not just saying that." "We're not just saying that," Adrian confirmed. Sophie nodded, decided, released their hands and turned back toward her teacher with the brisk competence of someone who had received the required data and could now move forward. Emily looked at the empty space where Sophie's hand had been in her hand. She looked at Adrian. He was looking at her already. "Chatter." The question came on a Saturday in June. She had been expecting it in the abstract, had known with the practical clarity she brought to most things that the direction of the last 8 months pointed somewhere specific. She had not known when. She had not tried to predict it. She had simply lived inside the days as they came, which was a new practice for her, and which was harder than it sounded and more worth it than she could have anticipated. They were at his apartment. This was newer. She and Sophie had started spending time there in April, first rarely, and then more regularly, and Sophie had declared the view from the 8th floor excellent for thinking, and had established a small territory near the window where she kept a drawing pad, and the better Gerald, and a particular blanket she had migrated over without fanfare. Emily was reading on the couch. Sophie was at her window territory doing something involving colored pencils and what appeared to be a very detailed map of somewhere. Adrian came from the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and set one beside her and sat down. He said her name. "Emily." She looked up. He had something in his hand, not a box. She registered that first, it was not a box, not the presentation object of a formal occasion. It was a ring simply held the way you held something you had been carrying for a while and had decided it was time to stop carrying alone. She set her book down. "I've been thinking about how to do this," he said. "I've rehearsed approximately 17 versions. Every version sounded like a performance, so I'm going to say the true thing instead." She waited. "You walked into a wedding 8 months ago and sat alone at table 12 because you refused to leave just because it was hard," he said. "And I sat down because I couldn't watch you be invisible to a room that didn't deserve you." He paused. "And in the last 8 months, you have told me the truth when I needed it, and held ground when I was wrong, and made me honest about the difference between what was expedient and what was right. You enrolled in your program before you told me because you needed it to be your decision completely. You brought coffee to my security detail because basic decency mattered to you even in an absurd situation. You sat at a table with your uncle and told him things I should have said years ago." He looked at her. "You have never once made yourself smaller to fit inside my world. You made me larger to fit inside yours." Emily's hands were still in her lap. Her face was completely calm. Her chest was doing something that had no clinical description. "Sophie," Adrian said, and looked toward the window. Sophie, who had appeared to be focused entirely on her map, turned around with the speed of someone who had not been focused on the map at all. She looked at the ring. She looked at Emily. She looked at Adrian. "I've been thinking about this for a while," Adrian said to Sophie directly. "And I understand that this isn't only about your mama and me. It's about all 3 of us." He paused. "So I want to ask you too." Sophie crossed the room. She stood in front of him. She looked at the ring. She looked at his face with those dark eyes that saw everything that had seen him for the first time through a car window and said, "Thank you for protecting my mama," without any preamble. "Are you going to keep being honest?" Sophie said. Adrian looked at her steadily. "Yes. Even when it's hard. Especially then. And you're not going to leave just because something gets complicated." "No," he said. "I'm not." Sophie considered this. "Okay," she said. "Yes." Then she looked at Emily. "Mama, your turn." Emily looked at her daughter. She looked at Adrian. She looked at the ring in his hand. Not dramatic, not oversized, not a statement anyone had curated for effect. A ring chosen by a man who had learned over 8 months exactly what she would and would not respond to, and who had applied that knowledge with the same absolute precision he applied to everything that mattered to him. She thought about table 12. She thought about 30 seconds, and then behaving, and then not behaving, and then deciding that what she wanted was a more important question than what was expected. She thought about a door that had been slightly ajar since October, and how she had stopped standing in front of it and walked through. She reached out. She took his hand, the one not holding the ring, and she held it the way she had learned he held things he had decided to hold. Without performance. Without looking for an audience. Just holding. "Yes," she said. He put the ring on her finger. Sophie said finally, with such profound relief that both of them looked at her. "I've been patient since October," Sophie said, defending herself. "That's 8 months of patience. That's a lot." "It is a lot," Adrian agreed. "Mrs. Kim would be proud," Emily said. "Mrs. Kim doesn't know everything," Sophie said. "She thinks Gerald is a sea bass. He's a blenny. I've been correcting her all year." Emily laughed. The real laugh. The one that had surprised both of them the first time at the restaurant with the 30-year bread. Adrian looked at her laughing. He still looked at her the way he always had, the way that took everything in and gave back only what it chose to. Except now she knew what it was choosing to give back. She had learned to read it. It was choosing her. Entirely. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday in July, because they did not wait once they had decided, and because Saturdays had always been their word for something specific, Emily Carter and Adrian Moretti got married. Not in a ballroom, not in a venue that made statements. In the restaurant that had been open for 30 years with the good bread and the wood tables and the afternoon light coming through the windows the way it had the first time when they had sat across from each other and she had told him she grieved the road and he had said she was allowed to. Robert Moretti sat in the front row and held himself together with the composure of a man who had been waiting a long time for this specific day and was not going to be the one who cried first. He cried first. Donna was there. She had worn red, which she had announced she was going to do 3 weeks in advance because she had waited 2 years for Emily to stop talking herself out of things, and she was going to celebrate accordingly. Rachel was there. Rachel Monroe, now Hendricks, who had sat Emily next to Adrian at table 12 because she knew her oldest friend better than Emily knew herself in certain crucial respects, and who had spent the last 8 months accepting credit for this with complete serenity because she believed the credit was fair. Emily's mother was there. Carol Carter sat beside Patricia and Melissa, and when Emily walked in, not down an aisle, just into the room, because the restaurant didn't have an aisle, and they hadn't wanted one. Carol Carter's face did the thing it had done in the kitchen when she had said, "You seem like yourself again." That revision, that recalculation of what she was looking at. What she was looking at was her daughter, not the woman who had needed saving or correcting or managing. Not the woman who had failed at things or chosen wrong or sat alone at table 12 in a repaired dress. The woman who had sat at table 12 and stayed, who had raised Sophie alone and built something real from the pieces of a plan that hadn't survived contact with the truth, who had gone back to school at 29 and enrolled before she told anyone because she needed it to be her decision, who had carried hard things carefully and without complaint, and who had at a certain point decided that carrying hard things carefully was not the same as choosing them, who had walked through a door. Sophie stood beside her in a pale yellow dress she had selected herself after extensive consideration, and had paired with the very serious opinion that yellow was the color of things that were both happy and smart, and that today required both. She held Emily's hand on one side. Adrian stood at the front of the room. He looked at Emily the way he had always looked at her, entirely precisely missing nothing. She walked toward him. She had spent a long time sitting in rooms wondering if she was enough, wondering if the version of her life that had actually happened, not the planned version, not the one she'd imagined at 22, was a life that counted, was a life that mattered in the way that lives were supposed to matter. She knew the answer now. It had not come from Adrian. He had not given it to her. You could not give someone that answer from the outside. But he had been the person who had looked at her and refused to accept the small space she had agreed to occupy, and had asked her what she wanted, and had listened when she said she didn't know, and had waited while she found out. That was what she knew about love now. Not that it completed you. She had never been incomplete. But that it was the person beside you when you finally stopped waiting for permission to be whole. She reached him. She took his hand. Sophie inserted herself between them with the cheerful efficiency of someone executing a plan she had been developing since October. "Sophie," Emily said. "I'm being inclusive," Sophie said. "Mrs. Kim." "Mrs. Kim is right," Adrian said. "Stay." Sophie stayed. The three of them stood together in the restaurant that had been open 30 years with the good bread and the afternoon light, and they said the words that meant they were choosing this, all of it, with full information on purpose for themselves. When it was over, when the room was loud with the particular noise of people genuinely glad to be somewhere together, Sophie looked up at both of them. "Gerald is not going to be worried anymore," she said. "Why not?" Adrian said. "Because now he knows we figured it out," she said. "He was watching the whole time." Emily looked at her daughter. She looked at the man who had sat down at table 12 without asking, and had never not once made her feel like she was too much or not enough, or located in the wrong place. She thought about what she had told Robert Moretti when he had asked her not to leave. She thought about the answer she had found in the dark in her kitchen 8 months ago, when she had let herself wonder for the first time what it was. She had it now. She had known it for a while. Some people waited their whole lives to be seen clearly by someone who then chose to stay. Emily Carter had sat alone at table 12 in a repaired dress and refused to leave, and the right person had walked over and sat down, and she had looked at him with clear eyes, and made a decision based on full information, and she had not looked back. She had not needed saving. She had needed to be seen, and she had been, completely, permanently, for good.